Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Castaway Anime. I'm Neon Manta,
And I'm Crunchy Bagels.
and this ain't just any episode of Castaway Anime. It is the first installment of Shinkai Month.
Yippee, yay, woohoo. Applaud now. This is your cue, audience. We are actively wanting audience participation.
Speaking of audience participation, if you'd like to participate in helping the podcast grow, please like the video, head on down to the comments to let us know what you think about Makoto Shinkai, how excited you are for Shinkai Month, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single moment of Shinkai Month, where we're going through the man's entire filmography, Makoto Shinkai, every one of his feature films, and we're getting started today with his first two, The Place Promised in Our Early Days, and 5 centimeters per second.
Is he the next Miyazaki, or is he just Makoto Shinkai? Well, I guess we'll find out pretty quickly with this first film.
Yeah, so let's a quick little background on him, just so we can preface this real quick. Makoto Shinkai, you know who he is. He's one of the biggest anime directors of our time. He is commonly heralded as the next Miyazaki. At first, from what I researched, it was like they were heralding him as the next Miyazaki all the way back in the mid-2000s, just for being this guy who's able to make these anime films with such a broad appeal and at such a frequency that he was just able to, get them out so fast, just like the Ghibli used to in Days of Old. And now that Miyazaki puts out a movie once every 10 years, and we're coming up on this year being possibly his last movie. So, for like the nth time, we'll see how that actually pans out. But regardless, Shinkai...
the word possibly is doing a lot of legwork there.
Yeah, so the bottom line is Shinkai has been thrusted upon the new Miyazaki label, even to famously his refusal of it and his rejection of it, saying that he does not deserve to be even remotely compared to the GOAT Hayao Miyazaki, which, to be fair, I'd imagine part of it comes down to, the Japanese cultural thing of not wanting to be compared to your elders and people have come before you, especially, as we've said, goats like Miyazaki. There is no other Hayao Miyazaki than Hayao Miyazaki, and no studio in animation history outside of Disney and, I don't know, maybe DreamWorks, but even then, it's gonna take DreamWorks a few more years, maybe decades, before they have the number of masterpieces under their belt that Ghibli and Disney have.
For sure, he is very up there, albeit I'm one of those criminals who hasn't seen a single Miyazaki film. I'm purely going off of hearsay when I say that he's probably a masterful director, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that Shinkai, he's a bit bashful, as everyone is, about their work at one point or another. He doesn't really accept the label with open arms.
Yeah, even when his most undoubtedly, inarguably most famous popular film, Your Name, broke the Japanese box office record and snatched it away from Hayao Miyazaki's cold, wrinkled hands. When he held the title for so long, he felt like, nah, I'm no Miyazaki. I'm just some schmuck who likes making movies. Is Your Name still the highest grossing anime film of all time, or did Demon Slayer surpass it?
I would imagine it is. It's difficult to imagine Demon Slayer surpassing it, but then again, it is just that big. I remember reading an interview way back when I was doing my Your Name video for the first time, of Makoto Shinkai reacting to the popularity of Your Name. And although I forget exactly what he said, I did get the sense that he was a little it's difficult to put this into words because it's like I don't know the guy, I don't know his psychology or anything like that. But he did seem a little, I guess, hesitant about its success. Hesitant as in whether or not he should accept it or whether or not it really deserved that much success. And that did sort of. I didn't really think much of it at the time, but thinking back, it does sort of resonate with me.
I'm looking it up right now, and I'm on the Wikipedia page for highest grossing Japanese films worldwide and in Japan, and Spirited Away has surpassed Your Name again when I thought Your Name broke it.
I know Your Name did at one point break it, unless it was, and I mean, I can't imagine it just being fake news.
No, because what the only other way I can imagine Spirited Away took back its spot was re-releases. Because I know, granted, I have no idea how much Ghibli Fest by G Kids every year contributes to sales of tickets. I don't know if it's still re-releases count towards its overall gross, but I'd imagine that, you know, it can't possibly have closed that much of a gap. As of right now, it is like $13 million ahead of Your Name, with Your Name firmly at third place, and then Spirited Away at second place. And yes, Demon Slayer Mugen Train is in fact the highest grossing Japanese film of all time.
I have a few words to say about that, but another day when I actually watch the movie.
It's currently at 500 million plus, and Spirited Away hasn't even entered the 400 millions yet for reference.
I would say that's sad, but at least UFO Table is getting the money, and they, at the very least, seem to treat their employees decently well. So I can't complain too much about it at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we're here to take you back to the past, to watch the shitty anime movies that suck ass. And
whoa, we're sort of jumping to that pretty quick.
Yeah, we're
Shinkai fans, you didn't hear that. You didn't hear that last line.
Yeah, no. Okay, Shinkai fans, pretend that the last 30 seconds was a complete blur, and we're gonna hit you with our
Shinkai fans
authentic first non-spoiler impression of The Place Promised in Our Early Days, his first feature film rather. We didn't do Voices of a Distant Star because that's technically a short film. So this movie, Place Promised in Our Early Days, I guess we'll just go ahead and get started with it. It was written, directed, and edited by Shinkai in 2004, and it's his first film to be a full-scale production over at CoMix Wave Films, which is pretty much become the Makoto Shinkai Studio Ghibli, or Chizu, or what have you.
What did CoMix Wave do before Shinkai? Did it do before Shinkai? That's the real question.
From what I looked up, they were a licensor for movies and like were a production company. Like I don't think they were like a studio where they made them, but helped to just like fund them. But once Shinkai came along and saw that he was incredibly bankable for how young the dude was, they were like, all right, let's get this guy in. Let's help him make his weirdo movies, and let's see if we can make a pretty penny off of it. Okay, and lo and behold, they've had a thriving relationship since.
I'm actually looking at the AniList page, and for
they do other things outside of.
No, for She and Her Cat, it's their very first thing on their AniList page with CoMix Wave listed as the studio, which is a bit odd. I presume they just released that randomly while also doing what you were saying.
Yeah, because She and Her Cat was
he got connected with that.
She and Her Cat was completely done by Shinkai himself. Yes. I don't think he did it at CoMix.
It says it's listed as the studio, but then again, AniList is not the most reliable source for this kind of thing, so mayhaps
I
it's
think
wrong
they
on this
probably
one.
listed it like that just to so they could organize it under something, so it's just not like studio lists on the website.
I mean, that's dumb, because you can. Why not make it studio list? But I mean,
I would
okay.
just say independent, but I'd just make an independent section. But that's neither here nor there. We've got all the background info out of the way, so the place promised in our early days. Why was it bad?
Oh, what are you talking about, Neon Manta? It's a very good movie. She's like connected to the tower and thing, and it made me cry at the end when she was brought to the tower and revived because, well, I forgot why, but I mean, it revived her somehow, and that made me cry, Neon. Yeah, I hate
Yeah,
this
but
movie. I hate this movie.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Shinkai fans watching this. But we're gonna have to rip the Band-Aid off. The Place Promised in Our Early Days is one of the most boring animated movies I've ever seen in my life.
All right. I did not All right, so for reference, last year, 2022, the worst thing I saw in all year, I gave a 3 out of 10 to. We are 3 months into the year so far, and this movie is already looking to be one of if not the worst thing I see all year, judging from that same metric.
Yeah, I also did. You also give it a 3 out of 10? Yeah,
we both gave it the same score. And it's so much. I know I'm sort of infamous for hating on Your Name. Literally, someone in my comments section today was like, "What? Wanted me to do a video on Bang Dream." Then they replied to their own comment saying, "Wait, I checked your AniList for a bit because I was afraid Your Name did." And then they were relieved because I gave it a 9. So I've become known for being the Your Name hater online. Yeah, this is so much worse than Your Name, it's not even funny.
yeah, because at least like Your Name has everything this movie does. I was gonna like list some things, but then I was like, actually, I can't think of a single area that this movie excels in that Your Name does not just like bury it, like curb stomp it into the fucking mud.
Okay, what I will say is that this movie, in sheer quantity, from what I could tell, has less plot holes than Your Name. In every other regard, it is so much worse, though. Like, it is baffling. Because I mean, this is well regarded,
what it lacks
right?
in maybe in plot holes, it makes up for in hilarious plot contrivances.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, both movies do have a lot of plot contrivances, but this does also have a bunch of them. And more than anything, the biggest compliment I can give Your Name is that it was told in an emotional enough way that your first time through the movie, it was pretty much common practice for everyone who watches Your Name, as far as I can tell. You watch it the first time, and you notice maybe like one of the plot holes. And then you think back on it like 30 minutes after you've seen it and realize like half of them. That seems to be the trend with Your Name, because it was so good at gripping you with the emotions of its story, and it was very energetic and fun at certain points, and the plot was told in a very compelling way, depending on who you ask, of course. But this movie is like the most rote, boring, tensionless, uninvestable. I don't get how you can be invested in it, frankly. And the plot is told through either nostalgia bait or really long and winding conversations, and not the Nisio kind.
Yeah, I was like really trying at first, because I was like, all right, it's 2004. It's the first full-scale Shinkai movie, and maybe he was just getting his feet wet. That's what I was like telling myself around the first 20 minutes when I wasn't feeling too big on it. Then it keeps going and like stacks all of these like tone and plot shifts that plot twist rather, that changed the entire trajectory of the story, and I found myself caring less and less as the movie goes on.
You know, that's kind of interesting, because while we both gave this movie the same score, I feel like we're going to attack it from different angles just hearing you say that, because I think that the first part of the movie is by far the worst. I zoned out within about 2 or 3 minutes, and you know, that's not too uncommon. I kind of have a short attention span, and you really need to get the viewer invested. So I'm like, okay, I'll give it like a little more time. It just does not invest you at all. And the main reason, I guess we'll just jump into it in chronological order. Actually, I have 2 funny anecdotes right at the beginning of the movie before we get into really ripping it apart, which is, first of all, Neon, you know about this already. My subs for the movie, every time someone was in monologue, and the very first sentence of the movie is in monologue, they had what Neon described as a font for a pirate-themed PS2 platformer.
Yeah,
And
I'll put the image on screen right now so the people can see. But
it is incredible. And so
it is some Jack and Daxter looking ass font.
My opening experience with this movie was, just blank screen, Makoto Shinkai, CoMix Wave. Then that font, and I burst out laughing uncontrollably. And the second funny anecdote is that right after that, we get the opening scene of the film where, it's the main character, Hiroki, as an adult. He's walking through a field. And then we get the little girl, who I forgot the name of. And she's running through. And she's
Sayuri?
like, Sayuri, yeah. And she's like, Sakoki. And then opacity fades out of existence. And I burst out laughing again.
As he stares up into the sky. Which
God
is
damn,
something
someone
Makoto
didn't
Shinkai
take their
characters
normal
want to
pills
do.
today.
So let's start by saying our positives on the movie before we just ruthlessly tear into it.
That's gonna be so
for the
hard.
rest.
You
all right,
already you're setting me up with
let's name all of the things we liked about the place promised in the early days. Yeah,
we gotta get
the backgrounds.
I mean, I have tons of issues with the backgrounds and their implementation. But they, on an individual level, are like wallpaper worthy. All the backgrounds are very pretty.
This movie is nearly 20 years old, and even to this day, these backgrounds, a good majority of them, hold up just as well as backgrounds today. Especially interiors of metal structures. Bro, my favorite background shot is the inside of this of the train that they're on.
I had that the inside of the train. Okay, we're thinking of different backgrounds, but yeah, continue.
It's the inside of a train, and there's while they're riding in it, the interior of the train, all the walls and ceiling are super detailed, and the light, there's these light trails that are shimmering and zooming. Streaking across the ceiling of the train as it's passing by through the windows. Oh yeah, I remember that one.
I actually
have
a similar background. Yeah, I have a similar background in mine. It's also related to trains, but this time it's at the train station. And as we see the train go through, we see the headlight of the train, and then once again the little shimmers across the train tracks. It's that's a Makoto Shinkai specialty right there that I didn't even know he had before watching this film. Just those little light trails are chef's kiss.
Also there's another cool background scene. Of
the field scene is beautiful.
Yeah, there's a shot of our characters walking in front of a storm in the background, and the lightning is red, and it flashes intermittently while they're talking.
Yeah, I remember that one. There's definitely a lot of very memorable backgrounds, and on the note of pretty and memorable, Tenmon's soundtrack. I have issues with it, but each song taken individually is pretty.
I don't remember any track from this movie.
I mean, I couldn't hum them, but I do remember all the vibes and the emotions they were going for. And although I'll get to the soundtrack because I do have things to rip into about its execution, But it's sort of almost like a cyberpunk edge runner situation, except worse. We'll get to it, but where it's like each individual song is pretty epic tier, but its use is poor. But I could put this on in the background while maybe I'm like writing a really emotional scene in one of my stories, and I'm like, I need something that I could imagine playing during this scene, and then I'll my mind will flash back to Place Promised in our early days, and I'll be like, oh, I'll just use that as like background noise to put to this scene.
And I'll just have to, as I'm memorizing all the backgrounds of the music, I'll just have to like use the editing software within my brain to cut out all of the characters, because they all look like they were designed using a how to draw manga book from Barnes and Noble or Michaels.
I was gonna get to that eventually. All right, I do have one more positive with an asterisk before we rip on that. The idea of dreams. Okay, so later in the movie, it does get very high concept, and they talk about how dreams are basically like you're seeing into an alternate universe, and the alternate universes are the universe's dreams, which is kind of an esoteric way to put it, but whatever. I do find, although the way it is told is extremely boring, that was like the most spark I felt while watching this movie, was thinking about that concept. Because you can do a lot of things with that concept. That is a very interesting sort of thing where it's like, I mean, there's so many places you could take that. And although I don't think this movie handles it particularly well, I did get some intrigue out of just thinking about what if dreams are alternate realities. That's about it, though.
I too love Inception, and Christopher Nolan is a hack and got the idea for Inception from this movie.
There we go. So
yeah, that's everything. You hit the nail on the head.
Wait, one more. The ending made me realize that I wanted the characters to see each other again. I did not realize before that point, which is an issue, but when they did get together, I felt good for like the remaining few minutes of the movie. All right, now we can continue.
you felt good for the remaining 120 seconds of the movie.
Yeah, basically.
The end. Well, I guess we'll get into that later. But now let's just tear into this piece of shit. The characters all suck and look ugly as sin.
I absolutely agree. And it's sort of like a two-pronged attack in terms of how they look. Because while the backgrounds are beautiful, I think the actual art style of the characters, even taken individually, is ugly, but within the context of the background, the infamous Digi meme, it's like they're from two different shows.
It looks like, I'll say again, all the characters look like they were taken from a how to draw manga book from Barnes and Noble or like a hobby shop, and look like they were placed inside lovingly detailed backgrounds from, I don't know, like a really high budget visual novel.
That is a very accurate way of putting it. They just the second thing though is that their designs just suck. There's one shot where there's like a series of three. No, I think that one was from 5 centimeters. We'll get to that one, but oh, now I remember. It was like very early into the movie. We see these 3 teenage girls that are roughly the same age as our main girl. And because, we haven't had much time with the main girl yet, I hadn't really memorized her face. Or rather, her face is impossible to memorize to begin with, because she blends in with everyone else. So when I went from the 3 teenage girls to her, I was like, hold on. Was she one of the 3 girls? Or was she not? Wait, I don't remember. Hold on, I'm confused. Wait, why is she here? Is she... Did she, like, want to ask him out or something? Just question marks firing off in my brain. And now thinking back on it, I don't think she was one of them. But I'm still not sure, because she just blends in with every other character.
Yeah, there's so much, like, I want to like tackle this movie from that I it's like I don't know which tangent to go off on or
Trust
which
me,
one
I'm feeling the same thing, buddy.
like I feel almost in like a panic trying to pick
All right,
which
you know what?
which
Here,
aspect I
I'll
wanted.
start us off because I loathe the first 30 minutes of the movie with every fiber of my being, and there's like pretty much nothing redeeming about it. And if the movie had been that quality for the rest of it, it would have been like at best a low 2. At best, because it is like offensively terrible. Or rather offensively boring, I should say. So the bulk of the first 30
it was not
minutes,
great, but I enjoyed the first 30 minutes more than I did the last
that
hour.
is insane to me. But yeah, I guess we can get into that. So the first 30 minutes, the basic point they're setting up is that these 3 kids, the 2 guys are in love with the 1 girl, and they're having a nostalgic, pretty childhood. That's about all you really need to know from it. Oh, and also there's this big tower, which we'll get to.
That's all you need to know, except for the fact that they're living in like a weird kind of, but not really, semi-post-apocalyptic Japan where there was a war. There was a world war. Apparently, from what I gathered from the movie, Japan was split. There's like a North and South division.
Yeah.
The North is controlled by, I want to say, I have the note for this. I want to make sure I have it right.
I think
The North is controlled by the Soviets, like the Soviet Union, I think, and the South is controlled by the United States.
Did they specify the Soviets? Because in my notes, they just said Union, and I just took that as, oh, there's a generic
I think they meant like the
union of
Soviet
countries.
Union.
That would make sense. I'm not exactly sure. It doesn't. The specifics don't really matter. All you really need to know for the emotional or rather, I guess, the plot of the film is that there's a war going on, and that's like the setting this all takes place in. And
yeah, well, yes and no. Like there was a war. They're now in like
they're about to have a
of it.
war, and
Yeah,
the war
like,
starts during the climax of the film in an attempt to ratchet up the tension, and he has to like fly through battling airplanes, and that's like the big climactic battle at the very end of the movie where inexplicable blood splatters occur, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
The one inexplicable blood splatter.
The one.
Yeah, so at some point during this this north-south partition of Japan, this tower was built. And it's it's a big ass fucking tower. I thought at first it actually like legitimately stretched into space and thought it was like a tower to a space station, but no, it just goes up to like the upper atmosphere.
I do. One of the most, or rather, I would say the most memorable shot in the entire film is when the main character is looking up at the tower. Then the camera pans, and the camera pans, and it keeps on panning. And you're expecting any moment the top of the tower will come into view. You never see the top of the tower.
No, it's
keeps
always
on
like
panning.
Obscured by clouds and always poking above them, so you can never see what's at the top. And it does, I'll give them credit, like the whole appeal of the tower is that they want to know what it's all about, like what's going on at that tower, what's it for, and what's at the top. It's a mystery that these kids have are like intrigued by, and they want to take a plane out there so they can put the mystery to bed, because it's so confusing, and by always obscuring it from us until the very end of the movie, the audience is curious about what could be over at that tower too. So I'll give them props for that.
I'll give them even more props for it working. However much the movie beats you over the head with its themes, it nonetheless does work thematically, where they're always searching for the place promised. This like basically childhood days of happiness that they're trying to reclaim, something very far out of their reach for much of the film. And so by having it so distant and far away, it reinforces just how heavy the tone of most of the film is, at least trying to be. to have it just be impenetrably tall, seemingly impossible to reach. And I think that is good stakes building. However little the movie does manage to capture stakes. But going back to what I was saying earlier, where I was sort of admittedly jumping the gun a bit on the movie's plot, because most of this isn't really relevant until the second act. But the first 30 minutes of the movie are characters having very teenage, or more like very generic ideas of happy, chipper teenage conversation with the most bland dialogue imaginable. Meanwhile, we get like all these picturesque, nostalgic backgrounds, and it's really trying to hammer home, look, it's nostalgic. Look at how nostalgic and picturesque it is. And this is where the main problems with the OST start to creep in. Because Tenmon's songs are very pretty. They are also very dramatic at certain points. There's this one scene that's seared into my head forever for the wrong reason, where the characters are walking through a field, and the soundtrack is building and building to this huge crescendo that sounds like it should be at the climax of the film, right? It is like absolutely gorgeous orchestra right there. And I can see like some context that being acceptable. But my main thought going when I was watching this scene is nothing's happening. They're just walking through a field and it's pretty. And then the sun comes up and then the soundtrack swells. And it's like, what was trying to be communicated there other than that the field is pretty and that the song is also pretty? This is like so overkill for what is just characters standing around and talking in a field. And there are so many moments like that in the first 30 minutes of the movie. It just feels like the movie is beating you over the head so hard. Feel something. Feel nostalgic for these characters. Don't you see how childhood innocent this is? Doesn't this make you want to be in a field walking with people? Yes, I get it, movie. You don't need to beat me over the head that hard with it.
See, I was feeling that when we got to the second act of the movie and Hiroki suffering from the worst tell don't show itis or case of it that I've ever seen. Like there's
we'll get to that.
Yeah, this and this isn't the last time we'll see it in his movies, but yeah, this was especially unbearable when main boy Hiroki just goes off on this monologue that would be fine for maybe a book, but is just the worst to hear in a movie when he's like describing how he feels and what's going on and how it's like affecting
oddly
him.
Enough, that doesn't necessarily. I feel like I just don't have an issue with that as much as you do, because you sort of bring it up as a complaint in a lot of things that I've heard so far. I don't necessarily have an issue with that so much because that sort of monologue gets you into the character's train of thought. It gets you, seeing what they're thinking and whatnot. There are tell don't show breaks many, plenty in this film, but I'm not so upset about that one per se.
Well, you see, I think this one is like doubly hurts as much because, going back to, Sangatsu, early on in the show when I wasn't as attached to Rei as I am now, when he would go into a monologue, it was kind of it was a poor first impression because it kind of just made him seem like a melodramatic prick and just not
he
very.
Kind of is.
That's at the start of the show he is, yeah, but not someone that I want to root for, like supposed to see myself connecting with. But at the very least, at least there was an interesting conflict that they established early on with him. Whereas Hiroki, I do not care at all, and he is a one-dimensional character.
The first failure of his character is his design. There is, literally at the first hurdle, it would be pretty much you would have to try really hard for me to care about a character with that character design. But
that goes for all the characters in this.
Yeah,
in this,
all of them.
all of these characters don't feel like characters. They don't feel like multifaceted, multidimensional, fleshed out people. They feel almost like robots or programs that are like mechanical androids that have the AIs programmed into them to feel specific emotions at individual emotions, and not able to, like, they don't feel organic.
I didn't necessarily have the same inorganic feeling so much as they're like literally. Actually, you know what? I take that back. There is some inorganicness in terms of like how much they're trying to seem like chipper middle schoolers, and maybe this is just more on the movie's framing than anything. But that did seem a little. They don't feel like they're communicating how they should. They don't feel real.
They don't talk like normal people. They talk like melodramatic, try hard book characters. Like,
I mean, there's some of that near the end of the movie that I will. There's a certain scene that I'm
willing to talk about it right now. There's like the scene where it's they're adults. There's Hiroki and his best friend, what's his name? Takuya. And so these character names just start to blend together, man. They sound so similar. Yeah, they're back in their shed, and they're back where they used to be building the plane that they been working on since middle school to fly to the tower so they can finally get to the bottom of it. And at this point in the movie, Takuya is working with the government to figure out the science behind the parallel worlds and stuff, and has kind of left the dream of flying to the tower behind, whereas Hiroki has been kind of coasting through life without Sayuri, who's been in a coma for 3 years. And so what they do here is that like they go back to the plane, and they're like, and Hiroki is like, hey, if we take the plane and we take the Sayuri, who's in this coma, to the tower, I think she'll wake up. But then Takuya is like, oh no, don't you know, man? If she wakes up, then that's going to link to the tower. That's going to open up a wormhole that's going to replace the entire world with like another parallel world. And like, we don't know what the hell is going to happen. It could be like the end of days. So we can't do that, man. And so in order to get Hiroki out of this idea that he's got into his head, he pulls out a gun from, I think he still had his like busted arm at this point, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he pulled out a handgun out from his sleeve, points it at the plane. I don't know like what his intention was at first. Like, obviously to shoot the plane, but I was like, isn't the plane made of metal? And what's a handgun? Are you gonna like shoot the controls? I don't know, like that was kind of poorly framed. And so Hiroki goes to like, push him over and be like, no, you can't. I think he like does punch him in the face, and we just don't see that happen on screen. And then like Taki like picks himself up, and he punches him in the face, and he points the gun at him, and it's like, all right, it's Sayuri or the world. You got to make a choice, Hiroki. And
we'll see. I'm holding back. We'll get to that. Okay, I'll let you continue.
And it's like it's so incredibly it's goofy in the moment, because this is like the first time these characters are interacting since their childhood. And like, just to see them hilariously come to just pointing a gun at the other.
But it's the third act. They need to split up in the third act so that they can get back together for the resolution. Don't you know how films work, Neon?
And then it's made even goofier by the fact that not only do they get together like super quickly after that, like basically this whole thing was the most minor inconvenient of roadblocks. There's a point where their mentor man, their boss man from this factory that they used to work at, Hiroki like trying to get something from the the factory, I think. And when he's like, he breaks in, the factory guy catches him, brings him to the ground, holds him at gunpoint, and it's like, you think, oh no, is he gonna be like set up to be some kind of antagonist of the movie now? No, they're like immediately working together in the next scene. And like they don't acknowledge that at all ever again.
Yeah, now that you point that out, why did he do that? That was kind of pointless, except to
it's they don't even do it a thing where it's like, oh, okay, hey Hiroki, I thought you were like not on our side, or I thought you were like one of those goddamn commies. My bad, crewmate. No, he's like very menacing to him. He's like smiling while he's got the gun pressed up against his head as he's got him pushed against the floor. It's like, I was under the impression that like the shoe was about to drop and he was gonna be like, sorry Hiroki, I can't let you take this your girlfriend to the tower, otherwise the whole world will fucking die.
Alright, so my main issue with that conflict. Alright, so not gonna lie, when I saw that conflict, I was like, based of I forgot his name. Based Glasses Boy. That's literally what I have him as in my notes.
Takuya is
to
not
me, he will
based.
always.
No one in this movie is based.
No one is based, but that was the closest someone got to being based. But it's sarcastic based. It's I hate this movie, and he's based for doing something that is sort of it aligns with my feelings with the film. So my main question around this point of the movie is a bit of foundation here, right? So Hiroki has it in his head that he needs to bring the girl to the tower, Sayuri. He has it in his head that he needs to bring Sayuri to the tower, and when he does, she'll wake up. Why will bringing her to the tower wake her up? Never explained.
Don't ask.
He just sort of, he feels it in his heart of hearts. But furthermore, the explanation that we've gotten in the film so far is that the tower is connected to Sayuri, and it's feeding Sayuri the dreams of the universe, alternate realities that have put her into a coma. So essentially, the tower is feeding her like all this data, and if she wakes up, that data is gonna like consume the world by like replacing all of it with matter from an alternate reality. Right? Got that?
Why
Got
specifically that. Sayuri of all people, you may ask? Well, don't you know, dummy, that the tower was designed by Sayuri's grandfather? Don't ask how that connects to, like, how that means literally anything.
I mean, okay, I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. I buy into that much. I do wonder why her grandpa would. And I feel like if this movie weren't so flawed to begin with and didn't have so many plot contrivances, I'd be able to just kind of buy into the idea that, like, yeah, I guess it doesn't need an explanation. But in the context of there's already so many weird plot bits already, it does sort of feel like, but why? Why would her grandpa connect her to the tower? How did he connect her to the tower?
Yeah, how is she connected to the tower? Like, I don't care that he's a like, did he experiment on her? Did he figure out a way to link the tower's universe altering waves to her brain waves?
But even more than that,
no explanation is given. They say Sayuri's grandfather made the tower, and that's it.
Okay, so the reason why I was saying, or rather, no, there's still more foundation. Oh god, I need to explain even more. So, the tower is like feeding her dreams, right? So, if we bomb the tower, it'll stop feeding her dreams, right? So she'll wake up, right? So can't we just bomb the tower? Why do we... So then Hiroki hears that they're gonna bomb the tower, and he's like, no, we need to bring Sayuri to the tower. And then it's like, but why? Why are you trying to stop him from bombing the tower? There's evidence that bombing the tower will wake her up. There's no evidence that bringing her to the tower will wake her up. So when Glasses Boy...
Yeah, but he saw her in a dream, therefore it is way more justifiable.
So here's why I was saying based Glasses Boy for pointing the gun at him. Because I was like, he's being schizo. you're having the appropriate reaction. He's like, you're insane. But then he says this, it's either Sayuri or the world. And I'm like, no, it isn't. Why not save the world and Sayuri? Just bombing the tower will save both of them. It's like the end of Weathering with You, but there's no justification for it. They're just forcing it in there, and it's like, you have given me no reason as to why bombing the tower would kill Sayuri. Like, how would that even work? What, is it because she's connected to it, so the tower dying will kill her?
She'll become a vegetable, Crunchy.
But why? There's no evidence that she would become a vegetable. There's just none.
Yeah,
it
operates on retard logic.
It's so goofy. So that was the moment where Glasses Boy stopped being based, where I was like, no, you're pulling that out of your ass. There's no reason why that would kill her. Yeah, this movie's dumb.
Yeah, oh god.
By the way, I'm seeing this in my notes right now and getting a flashback. I have a screenshot of I think Hiroki punching Glasses Boy. And then I have in my notes, I burst out laughing right here. So there you go.
Well, he punches him off screen. He like when he goes to point the gun at the plane, I thought he just like pushed him over, but apparently we see later that he's got a mark on his cheek, which I guess he punched him to keep him from shooting it. And then on screen, with the camera pulled back, we see Takuya, unload a right across Hiroki's face. So yeah, there was that.
What was even more asinine was when Glasses Boy randomly says, for some reason, I'm convinced that bringing Sayuri to the tower will wake her up. For some reason.
Even though he's like explicitly been, was this before or after him being like, yeah, no, Hiroki, what are you stupid? We can't.
Yes, this is after.
Yeah, okay, well, yeah, that's retarded.
He just randomly comes over to his side for some reason. For some reason, right there.
Yeah, dude. What else? The directing of this movie is like really not good.
Yeah, so I remembered from Digi's video him saying that it's like constantly focused on the backgrounds instead of the characters. And I really felt that in specifically the first 30 minutes, but
yeah, I felt that too.
And this is another reason why I said earlier that the backgrounds, their implementation can be kind of iffy at times, because I thought the backgrounds in this movie, they're pretty, but they're kind of obnoxious. There's so much attention put on them where it's like, look at the backgrounds. I
don't think that's the fault of the backgrounds. I think that's the fault of the directing. It is absolutely
the fault of the directing
and the shot composition. Like there's two shots that stick out to me as being as poor like direction. There's another shot that I want to get into right afterwards, but that's for a little something else. The first shot is the train ride with like the light beams of the interior of that train that I mentioned earlier in the podcast, with Hiroki and Hiroki and Sayuri on the train. But the focus, like the camera is placed in like the pulled back away from the characters who are drawn in like this low distance model kind of way, who are relegated to the lower left of the background of the frame, and they're kind of out of focus, whereas the main focus is on the ceiling of the train, and
there's more animation on the ceiling than the actual characters, if I recall.
Yeah,
correctly.
while they're talking, it's not even like a thing where it's not even like an establishing shot. They're talking, but they're not like the focal point of the frame, which is really weird. And then there's an even worse shot where the camera's situated like underneath these rafters of Takuya and Sayuri at a train station.
That's exactly we only see shot I had in my head.
And like they're talking, but we don't even see them. We only see them as we only see
feet.
we see the back of their legs, like through the rafters, and then the only thing in motion in the shot is of a passing train off in the distance. So that's what my eyes are naturally drawn to, because that's where movement is. Even though I'm hearing these characters talk, so I don't know like where am I supposed to be putting my eyesight, I'm naturally drawn to the movement because these characters are not animating. These characters barely animate, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I tried to look up the budget of this movie, and the closest thing I found was a Reddit post saying 600,000, but I couldn't find any way to verify that. It didn't say anything
Well, if
on
it's on
Wikipedia.
Reddit and it's an anime fan, I sort of inherently doubt their opinion on the
Yeah,
industry.
I don't have anything to back that up with, so I'm just gonna say unknown. But considering how many of this movie's shots hang on environments, of and not of characters moving or animating, especially even while they're talking or having conversations, I'm gonna guess it was kind of a low budget.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that.
At least
Either
that's
that or
kind of
they
the
were
impression
just
that the movie left
more
on me.
focused on the backgrounds and really just put all of their effort there, or rather all their time, and then the characters were more of an afterthought in that regard. I don't know. I'm spitballing at this point.
Yeah, and then the other thing about this movie, which has less to do with the direction and more of the editing, this movie is overexposed as fuck.
Yeah, I do see that. And actually, on
Yeah,
that note, I dislike its color palette too. It's so desaturated for the most
yeah,
part,
and washed
and
out.
it feels dreary when it
Like
when like the first third of the movie is supposed to be cheerful, and I'm like, but it feels so lifeless.
in its defense, sort of, it might have been in the name of setting up this kind of atmosphere of sort of isolation, because we see in this town of like war affected, I won't say war torn specifically, but war impacted Japan, that
War adjacent.
yeah, war adjacent, that's a good way of putting it. There's not a lot of people walking around. Now, of course, we can also chalk that up to, not having the biggest of budgets, but
they live in the middle of nowhere. I mean,
they live out in
that's
the fucking
about
boonies.
how many. To be fair, right? I live in a place similar to where they live. Yeah, you can go outside and see that few people. Like it's kind of normal, so I wouldn't really. I wouldn't really read into that more than it's just not a very populated area.
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe it was done in the name to set up an atmosphere of isolation, but it does with the amount of like desaturation and overexposing, especially in the first 30 minutes where like everything is like a blinding flashbang white for some reason. It's like it makes some shots look visually unrecognizable. There's this one moment where Sayuri is on a bridge over water, and the bridge is white, like from the sunlight, but she ran on a part of it that was underneath a roof that caused it to look like as blue as the water. So when the camera pulled back to a long shot of the bridge and she started like running back on the bridge, at first I thought she started running on water, and I was like, wait, what the fuck? But then I took a closer look and saw, oh wait, no, the bridge is just a slightly different shade of blue than the water.
Oh my god, it's Jesus! What are you doing here?
God really is a woman. Ariana Grande was right. But there's too much overexposed blinding white and not enough contrast to make it makes a lot of the backgrounds look just hideous.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from there. Want to talk about how dumb the symbolism with the tower is? Because
I don't want to say
really...
it's fine in a vacuum. The problem is they beat you over the fucking head with it.
So, at the beginning of the movie, we're setting up this tower, right? And, Hiroki's looking out at the tower and he's monologuing to himself. And he's like, I'm filled with yearning every time I look at the tower, and I feel like if I get to the tower, it's gonna be good if I just go to the tower. And
it's like, dipshit, you established that at the beginning of the movie. You don't have to keep telling us that shit.
See, well, even then, right? I was listening to that monologue and I was like, I feel like it'd be better if he was just sort of silent there. If we have the tower in the background in the movie, then maybe have him look up at it and, you see his eyes sparkle. You see maybe he's like getting a little hopeful. Maybe he has like a little bit of monologue where he's like, that tower is like, someday I want to visit that tower. And then, they're like all going towards the tower. And then maybe they have like a natural feeling conversation where they, sort of spitball theories as to like, oh, I bet the top of the tower is going to be a great place and we're going to reach it someday. It's going to be amazing. That would have honestly been
I have
fine.
the IQ of a coffee table, and I need the characters to constantly tell me what they're feeling at all times because I can't let the filmography do the storytelling for me.
Oh god. See, that's the worst part of it to me because it's such a good image. That tower everywhere. Even in Tokyo where the main character thought he could get away from it, nope, it's still there. And it's like that omnipresence of the tower. And if you make that truly symbolic and clever, that will be like really poignant, especially on rewatch. But the thing is, like for something to be symbolism, it needs to like be a symbol. But when the movie says twice in plain words that it is symbolic, and one of those times it explains exactly what the metaphor is, at that point it's just part of the main text. Like I came out of this movie feeling like I was the victim of domestic violence from how hard it beat me over the head with what the point was.
Yeah, that's why I said like these characters' monologues feel like they are taken like word for word from a book and then put into a movie adaptation with no
even in a
regards
book,
for
this would be inexcusable.
Yeah.
I cannot
like,
imagine.
It wouldn't make for a really particularly engaging book, but at least in a book you don't have any visuals to work with. You have to use words to paint pictures and convey how the characters are feeling at all times. You can't rely on actual literal imagery to depict what characters are feeling inside of a book, unless you're drawing a picture book. But like we're talking novels specifically. But in a movie and in like TV animation, it's a visual medium. Like I want to like grab Shinkai and shake him by his 20-year younger self, being like, it's a movie, dumbass. You don't have to like hit us with your college entry level fucking bullshit. I want to get my novel published first draft. You can just let the characters and the animation you let the animation and the character animation do the talking.
All right, since we're on the topic of novels, I want to talk about this is like super specific, right? This is going to be like super oddly specific, but as a novelist myself, or at least an aspiring one, this sentence offended me. So, when Hiroki is depressed in Tokyo, he's walking into his house, his piece of shit house that looks like garbage because, he's depressed and whatever. And he closes the door behind him, and he monologues, "Every time I close the door, I feel a stabbing pain in my heart, as if my bones are breaking through my skin." And I'm like, hold on, a stabbing pain in your heart, as if your bones are breaking through your skin? When did we jump from the heart to the bones? Hold on. It makes sense if you said, "I feel a stabbing pain in my heart, and also as if my bones are breaking through my skin." But as it feels, the connection between the pain in his heart and the bones breaking through his skin feels kind of like they're trying to be part of the same metaphor when they're really like two separate metaphors that should have been separated. It's weird. I know this is a nitpick, dude, but I was offended as someone who has to write stuff like that on a daily basis.
Dude, you want to talk about hilariously like stupid writing? There's a moment in like the second, like end of the second, start of the third act, where Sayuri and Hiroki are connecting with each other through like the dream world somehow, and like they're talking about like how they've been having like these thoughts of each other and strange dreams, and literally like they say it so closely that my mind just instantly jumped to I just imagine Sayuri and Hiroki sitting at a beach being like, I've been having these weird thoughts lately. Like, is any of this for real or not? A scattered dream that's like a far off memory. A far off memory that's like a scattered dream. I want to line the pieces up, yours and mine. When you walk away, you don't hear me say, please, oh baby, don't go.
What's that? Is that from Kingdom Hearts?
Yeah, that's Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, okay, good. I got it.
I was
right.
gonna say I'm
knowledgeable about
upset.
one franchise at least, or
I'm
at
gonna
least
be very upset
something
if you did not
in
know
pop
what that was
culture.
No, this movie's literally Kingdom Hearts, by the way.
I have not played Kingdom Hearts, so I would not know.
Maybe Dream Drop Distance specifically, but yeah, it is Kingdom Hearts. It makes as much sense as Kingdom Hearts.
There we go. We've been sort of neglecting to talk about the middle portion of this film. And that's because the middle portion of this film
it comes out of fucking nowhere.
I don't necessarily mind that it comes out of nowhere. I like tone switches like that. My main problem is that it is just plain boring. It is like really boring.
Well, no, hold on. It's a stupid. I didn't like it because it drops so much on you off screen and like. All right, so. It's prefaced by this moment of Sayuri having this dream or vision of the tower exploding spectacularly off in the distance, and there's this goofy color shift where like instead of like it focusing on the sky or like nature where you would expect a sudden color grade change to happen, it happens while like on her, the camera's on her in a close-up shot of her head, and it's like the goofiest fucking it seems like something of an AMV on YouTube that someone would make in the mid 2000s. And
honestly, that didn't bother me too much.
I don't know, like that part.
Coom over non-diegetic color changes too much for me to be legitimately bothered by that.
It's like the speed of which it transitioned between colors just made me like laugh my ass off, because like I just imagine someone like dicking around in Premiere and just throwing in a color change without any care for timing or proper storytelling, and be like, yeah, this is dramatic, this is engaging, this isn't at all hilariously distracting. And so then that leads us into a time skip where 3 years have passed. All of a sudden, Sayuri just falls into a coma off screen. We never see how it happens to her. We are told that she has been falling into sleep for longer and longer periods of time, and then all of a sudden we cut to 3 years later. She's in a coma. Takia is a scientist. Oh, and by the way, parallel worlds exist.
I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. I didn't mention this in the positives, but I kind of do at least appreciate how. Because here's the thing, like, putting together the mystery is boring because, the way it's told is very boring. But I do kind of like how out of left field it is and how much catching up the audience has to do.
It's not even a mystery, because once they started talking about parallel worlds, at my very first reaction was, did I miss something? Like, why are we talking about high concept sci-fi all of a sudden? But then when they mention Sayori's in a coma, and then they do like the explanation of this really techno-babbly explanation of parallel worlds and what they do at that facility of transporting matter from one parallel world to our world. Once they got to that, I was like, oh, well, obviously Sayuri's coma and this parallel world shit are connected then. So maybe you're like, her consciousness is trapped in a parallel world and that's why she can't wake up.
I mean, yeah, it is pretty obvious once you get to the coma. We're like, oh yeah, duh. But at the same time, I do still like how just sort of figuring things out through that process. I mean, it's still boring, but I don't mind it so much. There were ways to do it that could have been really, really neat. And I do I also admire just the gall of having the movie switch so suddenly and so insanely. That at least gives it more personality than what it had before, which was just nostalgia bait.
I just found it to be scattershot because, like, if they had, at least, like, kind of dabbled in, like, maybe, like, the theoretical possibility of maybe parallel worlds existing, but no, the very, like, notion of any kind of, like, high concept sci-fi is not even brought up remotely in the first 30 minutes outside of, maybe the visions that she has. But even then, I didn't expect them to be, parallel worlds. I thought she was just having, like, premonitions of the future, which even then it was still kind of weird to see it happen without any, like, proper foreshadowing. But no, then they just drop it full dick on the table. Yeah, parallel worlds exist. Yeah, catch up, dum dum. Where no sleeping in class.
I I admittedly do like the feeling of having to catch up, but at the same time, I've been sort of saying this over and over again. It's just long conversations with a lot of technobabble, with characters. Either it's the main guy, Glasses Boy, who we still don't care about, or a bunch of new characters who we obviously don't care about, talking about incredibly high concept sci-fi for like
There's this
the
one
entire mid segment of the movie.
There was this one character who is like with the factory boss man, who at first I thought was a grown up Hiroki, and that he had just like gone into like the study of parallel worlds. He's given like this TED Talk PowerPoint presentation to this group of people on parallel worlds.
I didn't think he was Hiroki, but considering how samey everyone looks in this movie, I do not blame you.
I was confused because I was like, why does Takio look like he aged like only 5 years, and Hiroki looks like he aged at least 10 to 15? Then I found out it's not Hiroki, it's just some literally Who scientist that the movie acts like is a kind of prominent character when I could not tell you a fucking thing he did outside of that presentation.
Actually, there's one thing he did that I remember because it annoyed me, and that's adding yet another plot contrivance onto this movie, which is, how do they know that she's connected to the tower? Because I know they
studied her, I guess.
Well, see, I know they eventually bring her into the room and like confirm it, and I get that much and buy into that. But what I don't get is how they initially got onto the trail of figuring out that this random girl in a coma is connected to the tower. Because the reason why I bring this up now is because the one scientist dude you were talking about, he is talking to the factory owner, and he's like, yeah, but there's, you used to see someone who was connected with the tower, and that was me, perking up and being like, oh yeah, she's definitely connected to the tower then, because, he's saying that, who else could it be? But then my immediate question was, well, how do you figure that out? It's just some random girl in a coma. I mean, this is before they've confirmed it. So, like, there's clearly some point before this where they figured it out, but how'd they figure it out? I really want to know. How did they figure it out?
I guess they went through their own version of this story. I thought that they were because like the way that those characters are talking in that bar scene, I was under the impression that this whole parallel world thing would end up being like some kind of time loop where it's like, oh yeah, we've done this kind of thing before, haven't we? And I was like scratching my head trying to like figure out what the fuck they were talking about, because like no way did they also have this idea to build a plane as middle schoolers to fly to the tower and hopefully not get gunned down by the military. But I guess they just I am not led to believe any other possibility. I don't know, this movie's fucking stupid.
Yeah, what else do I have in my notes? I feel like we've gotten to most of the big things at this point. There's
feel like we
probably
just
something.
cut to the ending.
Okay, so the ending, yeah, there's still more to talk about at the very end. So Hiroki eventually flies off in this plane, and Glasses Boy stays behind. You know, his arm is wounded, but you know, they built the plane together. They finally finished the project from their early days. Heh, the title. And so
And
he's got Sayuri
they are
with
going
him
to the place
in the
promised.
plane. Yes, they are going to what they see as the place promised. But the goal is to take her to the tower, wake her up, then bomb it. So that she doesn't die, even though we've been given no reason to expect her to die upon the tower getting bombed. But I mean, whatever. Right, we already went about that in extensive depth. And around this time, somehow they know that a war is about to be declared. I presume from spies, whatever.
Yeah, there was like this.
I can buy
Yeah,
into that, I guess.
yeah. There was this
assume it's
one out of
spies.
nowhere action scene where it's kind of like what I can only describe as like espionage. It takes place where I guess like the factory boys are terrorists and are trying to get information.
Yeah. I completely blanked on that until you mentioned it, because it doesn't really do a whole lot except to give Glasses Boy a broken arm.
Yeah, he gets shot in the
Or no,
arm.
yeah,
by,
gets shot in the arm
by like this a gunboat. Yeah, by a gunboat, and yeah, like,
I thought the entire thing was like they were trying to get through, but like they got to the edge of their territory, and then they immediately got spotted and had to turn around, so they didn't really do a whole lot.
Well, what had happened was
figuring it out.
What had happened was they crossed the border without being detected to like to the other half of Japan to get some insider info on when like war will be declared, or like some or weaknesses or schematics of the tower or some shit. Then they get spotted by the government, like this whole thing with like the car getting shot at, and it blows up, and they escape on a boat, and then they get pursued by what I assume is the Soviets, and then like they get shot at, and yeah, that's that.
So I guess that's when they get the intel then. All right, makes enough sense to me. So we go out into this action scene at the very end of the movie. It's oddly silent. This feels like the point where you'd want to have dramatic music, you know, unlike the beginning of the movie, which should have had either no music or like more calm, relaxing music, and maybe a little bit of emotion here and there. Yeah, this scene's just silent, except for like gunshots and explosions. I don't
And
know what that's
splatters.
about, man. God damn! I accidentally shot the ketchup cargo. Oh no!
Yeah, he had a big thing of Arby's sauce on that plane. I don't understand how blowing up a fighter jet causes the pilot to explode into a massive, perfectly uniform puddle of blood that like splashes onto Hiroki's plane with the consistency of ketchup. But it was very funny and very jarring for a movie that only had like it was kind of jarring to see Takuya get shot in the arm and bleed kind of a lot for like that part, but at least it was like we saw like the cause and effect pretty logically. Like, yeah, you gunboat, shoot big bullet, shoot through boat, hit arm, blood come out. Yeah, it's weird to have it, you know, suddenly come into this movie that has been pretty, you know, peace oriented and not very violent, but you know, that's fine. But then for this fighter jet to just blow up, like it doesn't, like the guy doesn't get ejected from his plane and then like lands onto the plane and like explodes from like the force of this like velocity of him falling and then landing on a hard metal surface. No, he gets blown up, and then I guess the only way that you can describe it is that in the sci-fi world, they have these weapons, even though there's no possible way because they look like they're just shooting regular bullets. from these planes. They maybe these bullets are like sci-fi empowered, that they, when they blow you up, they don't like, char you up or like like they vaporize your entire body, but just leave your blood intact. No, your muscles, your flesh, your bones, all gone, all your organs gone, but your blood is all that remains. And then it, I guess, is compact enough to just like fly uniformly directly onto the onto Hiroki's plane, where he's got to bust out the windshield wipers.
In the movie's ever so slight grain of sand level defense, the visual of the entire plane going red, like the interior where it's focused on his face, I did think that shot looked cool in a vacuum.
Yeah, but like the step taken to get there was, it's incredibly goofy and like hilariously edgy.
It just goes so so edgy for no reason. But eventually, we do get this admittedly emotionally cool scene where he eventually flies above the clouds, go into the tower, and it's just... See, this would have been awesome if there was a soundtrack during the prior action scene that was like super emotional and whatever and climactic, and then he gets above the cloud, and then it's silence. That would have been so
and
cool.
We're just in awe of the majesty of like he's finally there. He sees the top of the tower, and it's containing this kind of like wormhole that I guess is just like the pockets into parallel dimensions.
Yeah, it's a machine that creates or rather connects to parallel worlds and displaces matter from our world with that of parallel worlds. But the thing is, because the entire scene is silent, it doesn't really... It could have been so much more.
There's no emphasis. There's no contrast. We are expected to take both of these events at the same level of grandeur and of narrative weight.
According to the soundtrack, yes. But then, he makes it to the top of the tower. There's admittedly a pretty cool sequence of him, like, slowly spiraling around the tower, get into the top, right next to it, and sort of almost trippy looking in a way.
In his goofily shaped plane.
Yeah, goofy plane. It is a very goofy plane. But he makes it to the top, society wakes up, and they have their happy ending. And admittedly...
it's not, it's actually kind of a tragic ending because...
Oh, yeah, well, there is more to it. Yeah, you can go on.
Yeah, so apparently, this thought doesn't cross her mind until, like, conveniently the very, very end of the movie, where when Sayori is about to wake up, she gets this feeling, it's like, oh shit, if I wake up and the tower's destroyed, I'm going to forget, like, I'm going to forget everything that I've thought of in this coma. And I guess while she was in the coma, she fell in love with Hiroki. And I was under the impression that she was kind of into him before she fell into the coma, but I guess her
I
love
had
was...
that same impression.
I guess her love was solidified in the dream world.
What I think happened is that, like, she's in this lonely world, but having him there as like the only person who can see her for some reason, and like, she can see him, and having a few memories together that way was like really meant that much to her, and solidified her love, and how much she emotionally just enjoys the presence and the calm of being with Hiroki. And it's like, I'll forget just how much he meant to me in that time of abject loneliness.
Yeah, so like that, she loses her memories of when she was in the coma, so it's basically like she had never fallen. Basically for her, it's like she's never fallen into the coma in the first place, which is still kind of weird why she wakes up crying, though, because if she's forgotten that everything from her coma, shouldn't she forget she was in the coma to begin with? Because like that wouldn't then
Makoto
imply
Shinkai,
that
man.
If she's crying when she wakes up. So from what I had to look this up to be sure, because I didn't quite get it. apparently she was crying because she had forgotten her love for Hiroki, and that's why she wakes up in tears. But like, how would she know that if she'd forgotten? Unless she
Your guess is
feels
as
like
good as mine.
unless she's like feeling this vague sense of emptiness that she can't like place any feeling to, which I guess is kind of sad. But the way the movie ends, it doesn't give it any like
There's not
like
enough
meaningful
context
closure
to understand it.
Yeah, there's not enough context, and there's not enough time to sit with it because the movie just ends. Like, there's a bit of a I believe this is the order of events. There's a bit of a credits roll, then they bomb the tower, it gets blown up, movie ends. Yeah.
There's like a brief montage of other characters, as I recall, but aside from that, yeah, it's just kind of over.
And it's like, what
do,
what have we gained from this?
I will say I do once again like that. I feel like the very end of the movie at the very least solidified that I did want them to get together. However much I didn't realize it throughout most of the bore that was the movie.
I didn't give a shit. I didn't like any. I didn't care for them.
I didn't like about them, or I didn't like them per se. But I did, at the very least, at the end, be like, yeah, you know what? I am glad they got together. It's the only thing this movie made me feel aside from spite. But hey, it got me feeling a positive emotion. So
the ending
that's
did
something.
nothing for me.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, dude.
I will say that the whole now that we've decompressed the whole her crying thing, yeah, that is really dumb and could have been handled a lot better.
Like it would make like when it's not even like her waking up and there are tears in her eyes and like she's like crying before she wakes up. No, she wakes up and she's like embracing Hiroki and crying while doing so. Like, right? I'm not misremembering that, right? That's what happens, right?
Yeah, to my memory.
Yeah, so then why what the fuck then?
I mean, here's
either
thing,
then
though.
she didn't forget
you
or
said it was because she forgot her love, but then she like
But then why would she
embraces Hiroki, and it's like,
yeah, to her it should feel like she was never in the coma to begin with if she forgot everything in it. If she forgot being in the coma because the tower got blown up.
I'm not even convinced she did forget her love. I felt like she had fallen in love before.
It would make so much more sense if they like cut that part out entirely and just been like, yeah, when she wakes up,
you want to know what would have made more
with him.
sense? Just have her remember the coma. Just have her remember it.
Yeah,
I
just
mean,
like drop that plot point entirely.
Why does she need to forget it other than that Makoto Shinkai enjoys having characters forget things? Literally, what does it add to the movie?
It would have been so much more narratively satisfying if now this person that she was able to see in the dream world but never like have any physical contact or direct intimacy with. Now, after the 3 years of like pain and suffering she's suffered all alone, now it's finally over. He's here. She's back in the real world. She's no longer alone, and she's overcome with joy because of that. Nope. Again, we got to make it esoteric.
And here's the thing, right? It wouldn't even stop it from being a bittersweet ending, because I just remembered I forgot to go on about this, which is that the theme of the movie is that you can't really get back your days of blissful youth. No matter what, you're always at least a little bit, once you grow up, you do get a little bit jaded and cynical, and that's an inevitability. And the way to move forward from that is to acknowledge that you're never going to necessarily reach that blissful paradise you have in your head. You instead need to move forward, build up from there, and make the most of the fact that you are an adult and that you can't go back to what once was, but that there's still a lot left here to salvage. And I do appreciate that message, and them having to bomb the thing that they were looking to and wanted to go the entire movie, that's bittersweet. You still get the bittersweet tone, even without her. forgetting her love or whatever. So I just don't get why that's there. And admittedly, I do like the message of the movie at the very end. That's another thing I like. Overall, the theme, the metaphor and the symbolism was horribly handled, but I at least like that was done with enough subtlety that I did get something out of it. Yeah, I feel like I'm getting at the end of everything I can say.
Yeah, dude. In a year of animated movies that had Howl's Moving Castle, The Incredibles, Shrek 2, and the goddamn SpongeBob movie, I think this is like my least favorite animated film from 2004. It's definitely the worst one I've seen. I haven't seen every animated movie from 2004, but like I genuinely think even though like fucking Shark Tale is probably a technically worse movie, at least like from a technical standpoint, probably objectively speaking, but I feel like I'd have more fun with Shark Tale.
I feel like it would too. Most of this movie feels just kind of lifeless and bland, and yeah, I feel like Shark Tale would at the very least be fun. Now, I could see myself going on the couch, getting a bunch of friends together to laugh at Shark Tale. I cannot imagine getting a bunch of friends together to watch Place Promised in our early days. Okay, you know what? Maybe if we're having
it's not
a
even like a
sleepover,
fun. It's not even like a fun hate watch. Like it's just a bad movie.
See, all right. If we're at a sleepover, like we've stayed up too late and we realize that we actually do want to go to sleep, there we go. Place Promised. We can put that on. We'll be out in 5 minutes.
Yeah, man. I really tried. I tried to connect with it. It's just kind of ass.
It's really bad. The only thing, all right, if I had to because we've only really said negative things for the most part. Why I gave it a 3 instead of anything lower, it can't be a 1 because it at least has ideas. Yeah, and I can't say that about Isekai.
Those backgrounds alone like are single-handedly pulling it out of 1 out of 10 hell.
Let's see, 2 out of 10. It does have at least, the ending, like I said, does have some good aspects about it. It has at least interesting concepts explored poorly. And also, I have Wataten and Hensuki as 2 out of 10s, and I can't, in good faith, put this movie to those levels.
I feel like I would enjoy Wataten more than Place Promised in our early days. And I don't know what that says about me, quite frankly. Like I don't know. Maybe like what is that? Is that an insult to Shinkai saying that I would enjoy the pedophile anime more than his first movie?
I mean, at the very least, I'll give you this. Wataten does have, on a surface level, a lot more life and vibrance to it than this movie. And I can see on that level alone enjoying that way more than this bland, dull experience. So I wouldn't necessarily call that a huge insult to him, more so that this movie is just so impossible to get into because at every point it just lacks energy and just anything fun happening. It's just not fun. That's really what it boils down to. There's not a single moment in this movie where I can meaningfully say, without any sarcasm, that I had fun. The most fun I had was laughing at the bad parts.
Yeah, and like any amount of fun I was having with the movie, I was laughing at it, not with it. I was laughing at the hilariously goofy, out of like nowhere moments of like violence or edginess, or just the sometimes I'll see a shot that's like just I cannot believe it made it into the final cut of the movie and just be like bruh.
And see, the moments where you laugh at the movie aren't frequent enough to turn it into like a good comedy even. It's just
those moments boring. Are like separated by like 15 minutes apiece. At least.
Yeah, and like most of the movie is just a boring stretch of nothing. And then the rest of it is just like
flat. I'm flatlining.
I mean, I wasn't flatlined the entire time, because at the beginning I was going way down because I was actively insulted by how how hard it was attempting to be nostalgic, and how much I hated what it was, not just what it was trying to do, but how it went about it. That was hatred. That was not a flat line. That was me being annoyed.
The absolute last thing that I have to say about the place promised in our early days is on the Makoto Shinkai train counter. I counted 13 unique trains.
Oh, you're keeping count? Oh, that's a good idea.
I had the idea of like, what if I kept track of like every like unique train that shows up in all of his movies? And for this one, we're looking at a 13.
That's a solid score. Not shabby at all. Let's see how Place Promised compares to the rest of the Shinkai films in the only comparison that truly matters, the train count.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we forgot to mention the this is where Shinkai got his haven't seen Voices of a Distant Star, so maybe can't say for sure yet. If maybe we saw the possible birth of Shinkai's foot fetish in this movie.
Yeah, so remember when we said that the characters look kind of bad and that I don't think we explicitly said this, but the art quality is like way worse than the backgrounds. Yeah, we did say that. The art quality isn't that great. Well, there's the skiing scene, which does have great character animation. And then there's one shot where the character art just gets really, really good. And it's on the main girl's feet.
You did. Don't ask why, just accept.
Just randomly.
And it's not the last time. Not the last time in this podcast, and God knows not the last time in Shinkai's filmography.
For sure.
Alright, I think we're about done with The Place Promised in our early days, with 3 out of 10, right?
Yeah, 3 out of 10. Absolutely.
Yeah. We're sorry, Shinkai fans. We didn't mean to start off on a negative note, but hey, maybe he got better with the second one?
Question mark? So, I'll admit, I kind of spoiled myself on your Place Promised in our early days score. But I have genuinely no idea what you think about this film, so this is going to be interesting going in.
Well, it's definitely better than the last movie. He's definitely improved in the 3 years between this movie and the last one. This was also 5 centimeters per second, also written, directed, and edited by Shinkai in 2007, and it's his most popular film pre Your Name.
Yeah. Of the Shinkai films that you just randomly hear about, it's this, Your Name, and Weathering with You, pretty much. At least currently. And, yeah, I definitely see why. It has a really solid premise, and it really tries to hit you in the feels. You know what? Neon, lay your, just basic, shallow opinion on the movie, just surface level analysis on the thing holistically. I'm just
it's got a good first act.
And
Yep. It's got a good first act.
All right, well, I'm actually shocked because God damn it. I'm gonna have to do it. This is the birth of a crunchy you have not seen before. Because my 6-word review of this movie, once I finished it, is, so Shinkai can make good movies.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, if you cut out the first act of this movie and turn it into a short film, it makes for a really good short film. Unfortunately... Really... This short film has 2 extra tumors attached to it that makes it go on for like 3 times as long longer than it needs to.
Well, I'm gonna have to disagree there. I think the first act really, really good, like you said. Second act isn't as good, admittedly. I'll agree with you there. I still did enjoy it though, but not as good. Third act goes back up again. I'm not sure if it's better than the first act, but I think it works because of the context before it. And I think that makes it really much more emotionally powerful than I frankly expected. Because Place Promised had left me incredibly jaded on the future of Shinkai's filmography throughout this binge watch. But I was pleasantly surprised by 5 centimeters per second. I came in expecting the worst, and then what I got out of it is, not a great film, admittedly. It's not great, but it's solid. I enjoyed my time with it thoroughly.
It is okay.
I would put it a step above okay to say it is outright good. But I mean, it's a 7 out of 10. It's a solid 7.
More like 5 points out of 10.
Damn. Well, I'm gonna have to disagree with you there, Chief. But I guess we can get into it, starting with the first act, which you said you really liked. I'm gonna just let you pop off about the first act for a bit, because I'm gonna be doing the popping off from here on out. Here's all that needs
to be said. The very first line of this movie is, "Hey, they say it's 5 centimeters per second." I stood up and applauded. I got up out of my office chair and I just. Sorry if I just clipped the audio 5 times.
I mean, yeah. There you go. End the movie. That would have been.
I wish all of Shinkai's movies incorporated their titles into some way, because I don't know if they say the place promised in our early days like word for word specifically in that movie.
No, they do not.
And I know Your Name famously ends with like just before they say, they say the title of the movie at the very end, and. I guess it was kind of weird when at the end of Weathering with You, Hodaka was like, "Man, I guess this whole time I really was weathering with you, Hina." I guess this really was the Garden of Words.
And then he gardened all over the place.
Yeah. I guess we were at the end of the day we really were the children who chased lost voices.
Every Shinkai film should end like that.
I'd give him bonus points.
The finale
honestly.
of 5 centimeters per second should have been, "Damn, we really did drift apart at a rate of 5 centimeters per second."
the end of Suzume is like, "Damn, I really was door locking that whole time, huh?" This really was my door locking adventure.
And then she walked all over the place.
And then she made out with a chair.
Yeah,
and then she fucked the chair on screen. Yeah, I'm hoping Table Coon's got his time. It's time for Chair Coon.
That better be in Suzume, but
that's for
that
next
aside.
Month. Now it's about 5 centimeters per second. So this first act, it's about these 2 kids named Takaki and Akari. They're middle school friends. And they have this adorable little friendship that's real cute to see. It's real innocent and childlike. And oh my god, what's this? They're making me care about the characters by having them, interact outside of them just being, weird programmed robots that are just made to feel like individual emotions at a time. They're actually multifaceted and can be fun. Like there's this one. Well, granted, okay, in this scheme of like all characters in general, they are not the most fleshed out. They are ultimately still kind of we've upgraded from 1-dimensional to 2-dimensional, but at least a step up has been made. There's a lot more.
I will agree with that much, because the
there's
dialogue
been an upgrade.
Is like, oh, you can continue.
There's been an upgrade in. Just across the board, like backgrounds have remained as great as ever, but the characters have gotten better looking. We're not quite to, the level of character design that Your Name and Weathering with You has, but we're definitely a big step up from the shit that was How to Draw Manga from the last movie.
It's
And
still, admittedly, I still don't really like how they look, nor do I particularly enjoy their designs. Actually, the girl from the second part of 5 centimeters per second is way better designed than any of the protagonists. Uh, in terms of
did
their personality, it's mostly just like what the story needs them to be at any given point and not much outside of that. And in
yeah.
that sense, it is very, I don't know much about them as people. I just know their roles in the story. But at the very least, the dialogue is like marginally less insufferable than Place Promised in our early days. It is
Yeah,
like, it isn't so stereotypically at chipper childhood days. It feels like two people actually sitting down and having a conversation.
well, that's also kind of because they do at some point. And
Well,
it
yes,
is
they do.
very heartwarming and cute. And yeah, the inner monologues they're back. They're not as bad as not as bad as they were before, but they could definitely use some trimming of the fat. There's a lot of unnecessary insight to what the characters are feeling in the moment that we could have easily just gleamed through the visuals, but we have to have it hammered in through words because we are incapable of parsing them ourselves through visual imagery. But as far as like heart and soul, this blows fucking Place Promised in our early days out of the water. That one moment of Takaki and Akari at McDonald's bonding over their love of books and the library and just like whatever fascination they have of what they're reading at the time. Them hanging out at McDonald's talking about the Cambrian explosion and making Cambrian organisms out of French fries and ketchup has more soul in it than the entirety of Place Promised.
Absolutely.
I'm like that is my favorite moment of the well, okay, not favorite moments, because like there's a scene later in this part that will be my favorite, which is just properly built up, but it is so cute. It's probably one of my favorite highlights.
You were talking about the monologue, and admittedly, there are some moments where it's like, maybe you don't need to have it there. But I do like the big build up. Really, most of this first short film is about the build up of him going from the train stations on this huge journey through the snow to finally meet his girl for the one last time, because they are going to different schools now, and
They're
his
gonna be
monologue throughout
moving.
that point. Yes,
I just want to preface, because like they're gonna be moving so far apart now that they can't simply just like take a train from in the span of a day to visit each other. And since they're only kids, so like this is gonna be the last time they see each other until presumably they become adults and are able to afford the funds to, I guess, take the time out of their schedules to see them over different periods of time. I don't know. Point is, they're kids. They don't have much, so this is all they can do when you're a kid in the 90s.
and I actually think his monologue, for the most part, does a really good job of like dragging you into his narrative specifically and his head and what he is feeling about the situation. And I feel like it mostly adds to it rather than subtracts to it, and doesn't beat you over the head. And there are some images from this arduous journey that are just stuck in my head, because the whole thing is that the trains keep on getting delayed. And at first it's 10 minutes, then 20 minutes, and it eventually culminates in a whole 2 hours of this train alone in the snow, sitting there, waiting to be able to move. And when he realizes that the train has just stopped on the tracks, he curls up into a ball next to the window, and he describes himself holding back his tears and how he really just wanted to wallow in his misery, but he kept a straight face the best he could by just curling into a ball, not letting any of it out. And him describing that through monologue, I think, elevated that particular moment more than subtracting from it. That really hit me hard. And to be fair, it does still have a bit of novelitis But at the same time, I do still enjoy it as a short film.
Yeah, I adore it. I love how they're able to give you the sense that he's being put through an emotional ringer just by him like getting delayed at these train stations because he was supposed to meet her at like 7 o'clock. But then by the time he actually gets to the station he was supposed to meet her at, it's been 5 hours, and so he's thinking, man, she should probably just go home. Like, don't. It's winter. It's cold out. Don't wait for me in the fucking cold, Akari. Like this. I guess it just wasn't meant to be, and he's got like he still goes there anyway, just for like the. I guess he might as well, and also he's already come all this way, and he gets like beaten down again and again by the ever increasing delays, and when he goes to get like a drink or something, he when he reaches into his pocket to pull out his wallet for some money, he accidentally pulls out his love letter that he's gonna give to Akari to confess to her, and it blows away in the snowstorm, and you see him like his face like scrunch up in tears. He's so very obviously frustrated at his situation, and it's just like, god damn, man, you feel so bad for the guy.
It is such it was a surprisingly great uh experience because it really does hammer home in a way that doesn't feel overbearing but simultaneously communicates just how drastic the situation is for him, which is just this arduous journey through the snow. But eventually he does make it to the end, and there it, it's like the most smile-inducing scene ever. I know you're
fucking
chomping
know,
at the bit to
dude.
talk about it.
I know. Understand completely. I wrote down in my notes, despite hours of delays, Akari is there. She waited for Takaki at the station the whole time. I'm like, god damn it, that's adorable.
They have like this because she also has food with her, and he like remarked earlier in the journey, "Oh, I'm getting hungry," and now that he sits down to eat, and he's like, "Oh my god, these are the best rice balls I've had in my life." She's like, "No way, you're just saying that to flatter me," or "Oh, it's just because you're hungry." She keeps on making excuses for why he's just praising her too much. But he's like, "No, really, these are the best things I've ever had in my life." Just communicating how joyful he feels, and when they eventually like sleep next to each other in the little shed,
Ah, it's so cute.
it is so great.
Like you can imagine that when their initial plan was just to hang out with each other for a few hours, and then he would have to, take some trains home, because he was just gonna meet her at 7, probably hang out for a couple hours, and take all those connecting trains all the way back across Japan home, because they're only fucking kids. But then all the trains had to get shut down because the snowstorm was just like too bad, and so they find this shed out while they're walking home, and they find this big blanket, and they sleep next to it. They spend all night talking, of all of this after, by the way, they kiss, and like despite knowing that they wouldn't be able to see each other in person again after tonight, even though it might have been ultimately for the best to just not even initiate the relationship and not even open that Pandora's box of emotions, they do it anyway because they were the best of friends as kids, before she moved away, and they've been apart for a year, and they just can't help themselves, man. So they spend the night in a shed with a blanket, and when he says that they spent the whole night talking, even though it's already
It's
late
so
into the night,
great,
and they
yeah.
talked each other to sleep, and they're just leaning on each other in the blanket in the shed. It's you cannot watch. It is physically impossible to watch this and not feel your heart beating out of your chest.
I
"God
absolutely
damn it."
did. I also love the line where there's kissing under the cherry blossom tree, and it's winter, it's bare, but she's like, "Hey, doesn't the snow look kind of like cherry blossoms?" Where it's like, even it's symbolism, but it's not beating you over the head like it did in Place
Because
Promised, but
what
instead,
she wanted to do was to see the cherry blossoms fall together the next time
yeah,
they come, and so she's like, "Hey, this kind of
yeah,
works, right?" And then they
it
kiss
feels
because of it.
natural. And it's like, you know, it, obviously the relationship isn't going to work out, and that's the entire point, and that's why the cherry blossom tree is bare. But even in the wake of the relationship that cannot be, they find a way to have just one last spark before eventually they part ways, and the snow is acting as if it were the cherry blossoms. It's great. It's great. Love it.
Yeah, if this were a short film, completely separated from the other two acts of this movie, I would give it like a very solid 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. Damn. You
Yeah,
really
but
liked this short film.
It got me, feeling like I was like, God damn, I wish love was real. Like, this is the kind of thing you watch, and like you feel sad that if you watch it at the time you watch it, you are not in a relationship. If you're not in love, you so desperately want to feel that way. You know what I mean?
Actually, funnily enough, instead of having that specific feeling, because I'm terminally writer-brained, I was like, maybe I should write romance more seriously in my books, because so far I just mostly write it very goofy.
I mean, like, it makes you take it seriously. It makes you, like, yearn for it, I suppose, in our own ways. And it's just that because I enjoyed that part so much, it's because I didn't enjoy the other two acts that makes it, like, all the more heart-wrenching for me. Because it's like, we were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
So I guess I'll start off talking about what I like about the second act, so that you can eventually crush all my dreams and tell me why I'm actually adopted. Tell me why I'm adopted.
Yeah, you are adopted.
So the second act of the movie is all about this tan girl. Do I know her name? No. This
Kane.
is an early Shinkai movie. Kanai.
Her name is Kanai.
Kanai. Whatever. Kunai.
Also,
it's
she's
like
not. She's not that
ninja
tan.
knife.
Come on. She's like a 3 on the tan scale.
Yeah, I mean, compared to the ghost that is her sister.
Well, that's every Japanese character.
True. So Tan Girl has a big ol' crush on the main character boy, and Tono-kun is what she calls her, and she's at first working up her courage to ask him out, but it's just she's very shy and blushy. There's this one smile-inducing bit that really made me root for her relationship, even though, in fairness, she is, as a character, the most interesting one in the film, honestly. And there's this one scene where so the main boy is doing archery, very precision shooting. He pulls it back silently, then releases it. And he has this air of stoicism and deadpan about him, very serious minded. And she, walks up to him and she's like, yo, hi, whatever. And, they eventually get to talking about how she surfs, and, she's used to be able to surf in the past, but, for a myriad of reasons, from what I gleaned, the main one was that it's just the time of the year where the water is rougher, and she's frustrated that she's not able to surf on those specific waters now that the tide is a bit more aggressive. So, she can't surf, and she's really frustrated about that. But he looks at her, the main character, Tono-kun, he sees that she's tan. He's like, yo, you're working hard. And she just blushes uncontrollably at that, because she, her work is being recognized by her crush. She did something impressive to him. And then she immediately just runs off, and it's so adorable. I really like that moment. And it's all about her, basically the duality of her learning to surf again, as well as trying to confess her feelings to him, where she basically sees the surfing as okay, once I accomplish this, I have done enough, and I am worthy enough, and I am accomplished enough to be able to ask him out. She's sort of she's colliding these two things in her head. And the way I read it is that it's mostly, although she does want to surf, it's almost like a way of her delaying having to do it, where it's basically passing off the baton to the her of tomorrow, where she considers her current self to be too cowardly and blushy and anxious to ever be able to ask him out. But it's if I can surf, I'll be confident, right? But no, that's not how it works, but we'll get to that. And there's this huge subtext throughout the second chapter of the inverse side of love that I really connected to, where she keeps on describing how anxious it makes her feel. How it's like, every time I think about him, it's like, oh my god, my heart is about to leap out of its chest, but also like, I almost hate the feeling. But then when I'm talking to him, it's like, oh, but it feels so good to talk to him. And that makes me so, so happy. And this whole subtext of her being a very anxious person in regards to love, and I know that made me connect with her. And I was like, oh, wow, even though I would not consider this a great character, nonetheless, in the context of the film, she is nonetheless, serving her purpose incredibly well and does have a bit of a personality and makes me want to root for her way more than any character in Place Promised. I was wholly on her side. When I said I wanted the main two to get together in Place Promised, that is tiddlywinks compared to how much I wanted her to get with Tono.
Fucking tiddlywinks.
Tiddlywinks. But of course, this is an entire film. I said the chapter is about the inverse side of love, but it may perhaps be more accurate to say that the entire series of short films is about the inverse side of love, because she eventually, she finally learns how to surf. She's done it, and she's so happy and gleeful, and there's this great animation of her surfing. Very triumphant moment. Very well directed, in my opinion, too. And like the camera work gives it this sense of huge like grandiosity that really cements how big this achievement is. So she's waiting, behind the wall at school, waiting for Tono-kun to walk by, and she's gonna confess her love. But they eventually they get to talking. They're walking around. They eventually visit the supermarket, buy some stuff. The very detailed supermarket you showed me. Great backgrounds as always. And they're just talking together. She's like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Wait, no, I didn't do it. Wait, no, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. But eventually, she gets to try to confess to him, but he's like, what is it? She's like, nothing. And the entire time she just keeps her mouth shut. Her bike breaks down, so they have to walk home, and it's like, oh, she has another chance now. Maybe she can redeem herself. Nope. But eventually, at the very end, they see there's basically, earlier on in the movie, there was this rocket being carried on a train, if I recall correctly. There was some kind of cargo vehicle. And
it was in fact a train. I was keeping track of it on the train counter.
And they eventually blast off the rocket, and she looks out at the rocket, and it makes her realize, oh, that's why I can never get with Tono-kun. It's because he's always looking out to the distance. I'm not the one for her. He's very distant from everyone around him. He doesn't really communicate with people. Or rather, it's not that he's friendless, but it's that, he's very stoic and very wrapped up in his own world and distant from everyone around him. And that's because he has his sights set somewhere else. And although there's a part of me that's like, but that's kind of a vague and esoteric realization on her end. Like, how did a rocket get you to realize that? I can nonetheless buy into it enough to be like, yeah, I get where she's coming from, and I get her sadness completely. And there's also a part of me that's like, just ask her, just shoot your shot, just trust me. But I nonetheless think it's more emotionally powerful, despite how it can be frustrating, that she comes home and cries her eyes out. And curls up in a ball and is like, this is all dumb and pointless. I feel so bad. And another thing, one last thing before I let you speak. I'm sorry I'm taking so long, but there's one other thing I really like about this chapter, which is that so Tono-kun, throughout the chapter, he's texting on his phone, and although I knew instantly how I've been spoiled on this series of short films before. Pretty much everyone knows how it ends going in. But to new viewers who may not be initiated to just how depressing the ending is, they may think, well, there's 3 characters in this film, and one of them is clearly not the one he's texting, so it's the girl. They kept in contact after all that time. But then there's like this absolutely heartbreaking realization. Even though I knew it wasn't the girl, I wasn't prepared for how depressing it would get when upon the realization that Tono is literally texting nobody. He is texting to himself because
he is sad
so
boy posting to no one.
He is so depressed and lonely that he needs to vent his feelings somewhere, get them out somehow, but he does not have anyone to vent to.
I'm not gonna say it.
What are you trying to say?
I'm not, how you said vent, I'm not gonna say it.
How I said venom?
No, you said vent.
Oh no! Oh no! But yeah, I wrote down in my notes he should start a diary. I'm huge on that diary grind set. Everyone should have a diary.
He does. Well, I mean, he is writing a diary. He's just erasing every page of it.
He just erases everything immediately. So yeah, that is why I like the second short film. I want to hear your take on it.
So here's the difference of how engaged I was between the first and the second. So for the first one, I have, let's see, like a whole page worth of notes for the first short film. For the second short film, I have exactly 2 notes.
Jeez.
Yeah, I have, there's a girl named Kanai, and she has a crush on Takaki. And then the second note is not even anything to do with, the second short specifically, just the movie at large. I was just saying character art has improved, but the backgrounds are still the main attraction. Because, yeah, that one convenience store shot that probably killed 3 background artists to make, that Shinkai just sacrificed upon the altar. I don't understand how a human being is able to make that, but, like, you know, Godspeed. I find myself just woefully not as interested or invested in the schoolgirl crush that Kanai has, mainly because I am missing 2 things. One, I was a little taken aback by the sudden switching of perspectives between Takaki and Kanai, because now Takaki, we've gotten so personal with him in the first part that now he seems, it's weird to have him, you know, distant and far off, you know, far away in the second one. But I guess that is also to its benefit from coming from Kanai's perspective, because that matches up how she ends up feeling about him despite her crush. And I get that thematically her story is like her love for him is also fatalized by distance, not in the sense of physical distance, but in the sense of like emotional distance. Like, Takaki is so emotionally distant from everything else going on around him in his life that it seems like he is just kind of coasting, not really living in the moment. He's kind of a creature of habit.
I'm gonna cut you off real quick because there is something I want to mention, which is in the first short film. There's this one line that I really like where he says, right after, you know, he's got done talking to the girl, and, you know, he's going home on the train at the very end of the film, he's like, after that, I gazed at the world beyond the window forever. Which is basically just a harbinger for him eventually feeling like he's just watching life pass by. Exactly his emotional state here. But yeah, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, so, like, all that I get. I just ultimately found myself not able to connect with Kanai that much, because, like, Takaki and Akari's story works to me because, like, even though, yeah, they're both pretty simple characters, that their story was, you know, a simple story told pretty simply, but as effectively as possible. Whereas here it feels like Kanai is supposed to. It feels weird to have Kanai like just come into the story and try to, I don't know, catch up in a sense to where Takaki is in the narrative, And like Lord knows I tried to get behind is like, okay, like he's still hung up on his first, and so like, no way this girl has any chance, and we're waiting for her to like realize that she has no chance. But I found myself just kind of like bored throughout, waiting for something as interesting or as heartfelt from the first part to happen. uh I like the whole thing with the surfing. It felt nice for like a 1-2 punch of, oh, I don't know how to, I used to be good at surfing, but it's been like 6 months and I just kind of started sucking ass at it, and I don't quite understand why. And then she's like, oh, I get it. The reason I've sucked ass so much is because I've not been able to uh convey, or like what's what I'm looking for, come to terms with my feelings for Takaki, and not bring myself to be able to work the courage up to confess to him. And and I didn't understand my role in the world, but you know what, it's become a little clearer to me. I'm gonna do like everything piecemeal. Like I can't get too worried about my future. I gotta live more in the moment now. And I feel like that was kind of and I like that she was able to ride the wave afterwards, but like I feel like that was ultimately disconnected from like her realizing that she is too, like the reason she can never love Takaki, or no, the reason she loves Takaki, the reason why she knows she can never be with him is that he would not be able to reciprocate her feelings even if she had told them to him, because he's just so like far removed and outside of her world. And from his perspective, she is outside of his world, like not even on like his emotional radar. Like he acknowledges her existence, but is not able to she can tell that he's already always in his own head, and probably doesn't have like the capacity to love her in the way that she loves him. I don't get how these two things are correlated with each other.
I mean, what you mean, like the surfing?
And well, no, I get the surfing part a little bit, but like the whole I can't confess to my crush, and then and like her ultimately coming to terms with like, yeah, oh, like the reason I can't is because like he's just, it's like not, I'm just not in his world. And that, and also like, yeah, it's that, and then connecting with her lack of direction in her life. I don't get the like narrative correlation.
So the
It felt like
lack
too.
of direction in her life. I guess it's more so for character building, but yeah, that isn't really what I like the chapter for. I'll be the first to admit that.
Yeah, it's like this film is only an hour long, and like this part of the movie is, I think, the longest.
Uh, if it is, it's barely.
Yeah, because I think I remember the first part being like about 24 minutes long, like the average length of a TV episode, and I think this one was like roughly the same, if not maybe a minute or two longer. But it felt like for the amount of time that we spent mulling around that issue, it felt like it was taking valuable time away from Kanai trying to like it's a little hard for me to put into words at this moment, but like my ultimate feeling towards it is that I feel like we are spending this limited runtime that is here, we're wasting it on this thing that doesn't isn't cohesive with the other narrative that's going on, and the one that's going to permeate throughout the rest of this film. Because once Kanai is done here, she's done for the rest of the movie. She doesn't come back in the third act, which I kind of found to be weird.
A little bit in the music video, but I think it's just reused footage, if I'm recalling correctly.
I think it's just reused footage from the AMV montage at the end.
Yeah. And yeah, if you have a problem with that, I can't really argue against it. What I I actually appreciate it being like a change of pace rather. And also, although I say mostly that the characterization in this film once again only really works in the context of like what it's trying to communicate thematically and through its narrative, I think that the immediately changing narrators in order to put ourselves distant from Tono-kun is a good choice to communicate that sense of isolation and just how straight-laced he has become and how distant he has become from everyone around him. And what you were saying earlier, for it, basically her crush on him and not being able to communicate that, how that connects with him being distant. I mean, I guess it still works with the distance, I feel, because she's unable to confess out of her nervousness, and he is unable to reciprocate her feelings anyway because he is, interested in someone else. And I think it's mostly there to hammer home this idea of distance, that she is so far away from even being able to confess, and then on top of that, he straight up won't even reciprocate and has zero chance of doing so. And I think that is sort of the realization of how far apart they are is what the entire film is, or yeah, what the entire short film is building to.
Like, I guess it's just I I feel like it was just wasted time, or at the very least, there was not enough time dedicated to putting together a meaningful connection between her being unsure of her future in life and her not being able to uh confess to Takaki and be a part, like her realizing that she's not going to be a part of his world. Because
Now that
I
I
feel like
think about it, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think the indecisiveness in life might just be like trying to hammer home that she doesn't really have the courage to make concrete decisions for the most part and go through with them no matter the risk. No, it's
but
just to
then
sort of like hammer that home.
wouldn't it have made more sense then for her to if we're trying to connect these themes together, wouldn't it have made more sense and be more satisfying narratively to have her like try to confess, and then the scene with the rocket happens where she realizes that he is just so far out of his reach, and then we go to the her riding the wave for the first time, because now that she's like finally come to terms with it, and like she is like more, and that experience gives her like a bit more understanding about her place in the world and what she
Ah,
uh
but that sort of undermines, well, not really undermines so much as it
well,
is that
she
it's
never
going for
gets the
different.
courage to confess to him anyway, so
Yeah,
like
but
even after riding the wave, when she's like, all right, if I can't, she even explicitly says, if I can't confess to him after riding that perfect of a wave, then I don't think I'll ever be able to do it.
I mean, I feel like having the wave scene afterwards would sort of it would
I feel like that would
significantly
have been
change
like a
the
nice little.
tone of the short film.
Yeah, but I mean, if Kanai's not gonna come back anyway, then what? Well, at least give. I mean, maybe give her a happy ending, and if the overall movie is
But
going to end on a bittersweet note anyway, so
I mean, I feel like the point though is that it's all about different doomed romances, and that that's the connecting theme between all of them, even if it isn't. I mean, it is one narrative, but it does thread in a third character for just one part, and you could say that's distracting from the point, but it does still nonetheless uh coincide with like uh the rest of the stories being about the inverse of love and how it's all sort of depression that can come out of not being able to confess, and so giving her a triumphant ending where she overcomes that would I guess lessen the overall feeling of
well, she
despair that
still
it's
would.
supposed to be imparting on the viewer.
It would still. I think it would still work in the sense of like she is still sad by like kind of like by the end of it. She finds like a silver lining in it, but like she like was still without her crush, and like her love ultimately, would wither and fade, if that. But at least at the very least, she would like find herself a little bit and grow as a person because of it. And you say like the whole thing's about the inverse of love. I would argue that the first act of this movie is like about like the power of love.
That is fair, but to be fair, also in my defense, it is setting up the power of love in order to then hit that much
Yeah,
harder
hit you with
for
the inverse of love. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like, yeah, then wouldn't that make such a nice little like falling action, like a little gradient scale of it being like, yeah, we start off with like the power of love, and then we would transition to the next act, which would be like this bittersweet ending of it being like yeah, you know what, sometimes love doesn't work out, but at the very least this person was able to learn a little bit about herself and able to take something valuable away from it. And then with the third act, where it just kind of has a, like, yeah, it's kind of also bittersweet, but I would say it's definitely the most depressing ending of the three.
I mean, I don't know where you're getting the sweetness from. I got pure depression for that one.
He smiles at the very end of it, but like I feel like that's kind of just open to interpretation of it being like, you know what, maybe it is time to move on, but we're jumping a little ahead. But that's how I would have constructed it if I were making the movie.
I mean, I guess if you wanted to do it that way. I'm still not really sold on this being a big issue in the first place, not gonna lie.
Well, maybe I can put it more into perspective with talking about the third act, where it's now years in the future. Takaki and Akari are adults now. Akari is engaged to another man. It seems like her love for Takaki has maybe not entirely like faded 100%, but at the very, like, it's not disappeared from her life entirely, but at the very least it has like just with the passage of time and seemingly because it's been so long since they've communicated with each other that they just kind of faded out of each other's lives, that it's just like her love for him has shrunk to a point where it has been superseded by we never, I don't think we ever see the guy, or if not, if we do, we see a brief glimpse of him in like the montage AMV. But yeah, she's engaged to another man and turning our poor boy from Takaki into Takaki. And now he's like so cucked, he's lost all passion in his life over his middle school crush, so he just goes ahead and quits his job, like kind of just unravels at the seams. He's just not
the way
happy.
It's described, you're sort of underselling just how, at least to me, emotionally powerful it was, because he describes this process of, he's an adult now, very depressed at not, he's very lonely, and his heart yearns for someone who he can never have, and so to forget about the pain, he just completely consumes himself with work until eventually, he just keeps on single-mindedly pushing forward into work, but he realizes, oh, I've pretty much lost all lust for life. I do not enjoy living at all, and if I continue this, I'm going to completely burn out, and so he quits his job. It is a very heart-wrenching moment. I didn't expect it to go quite so hard.
Yeah, I was like, I honestly, at first, I was a little like taken aback by it, because I thought he was being a little over dramatic. Like I get being like yeah, like I've like been so emotionally affected by this that it's like kind of affected all other aspects and facets of my life. But like part of me was just like, my brother in Christ, that it was a middle school crush, and you now have a girlfriend and a job. And I also, side note, that girl that he apparently was texting and ended up breaking things off with, I did not register until I looked it up that was a different character and that was his girlfriend. I deadass thought that was Akari trying to text him and tried to just to keep in touch with him at least a little bit, and he just like lost all ability to like bring himself to keep in touch with her. Because just like from like talking to her would just like make him like feel pain.
I didn't get that vibe per se. Actually,
Like
one bit
in my
this...
defense, she looks so similar to Akari.
I mean, everyone looks similar in this film.
Kanai didn't look
okay,
like Akari.
okay, Kanai didn't. I'll give you that one, but in a lot of these films, to be fair,
sure she was in the movie.
Designs
for like
are pretty
that
generic.
one shot.
Yeah, this is actually the shot that I really like because there's this shot of this girl trying to call him, and she seems very excited about it. We get the sense that she's crushing on him, and then he sees the call on his phone. He just does not answer the call. And it's like at this point his heart is so closed off that like before he was willing to at least talk to them and be friends with women. And at one point even dated one for 3 years who is willing to get back with him if he so desires. But at this point he has just become so, his heart has become so hardened and he's closing off people so much that when his coworker at the time, I think this is before he quits his job, and she's calling him, he just straight up does not answer, even though there's no reason for him not to. And that was incredibly powerful to me.
Like I'm so torn on this because I keep going back and forth and being like like I feel like I get what they're going for, and I kind of like the idea of it, but like the way that it was set up between the first 2 acts to now, it feels like it just feels like he's like letting this middle school crush like fuck him up so badly even in his adult years. And
I mean, yeah, he kind of is, and it is very pathetic. Like, don't get me wrong, it is very pathetic, but at the same time, I do buy into the emotions the film is going for. And I think the idea that it really can go this far, because I mean, and not to say I know anything about Makoto Shinkai, but the chances of him having gone through something similar in his life are about 99.999%.
I have never met Makoto Shinkai in my life, but I am positive of 3 things: that he is he loves trains. Like he's got a unbridled love for unrivaled love for trains. He has a foot fetish, and I'm very positive he has had at least one relationship in his life that was fatalized by distance. And his entire career as a director is him just basically huffing copium. Like this is his coping mechanism.
To put it. And yeah, and I, with that context and knowing that like this is pretty much how his entire filmography goes, it does lend it a sense of authenticity, even if it does go so hard to where if you are a little more cynical about it or a bit more jaded, you could say, well, bro, that was in middle school, bro, wake up. But it's like, no, I buy into the emotions of the film, even if there is a part of me that's like, bro, that was middle school,
I don't know. I feel like there's just like some kind of key element that's missing, like from this equation, that's making me be like, oh, okay, like I fully get behind why he's like so fucked up in his adult years over this middle school crush from what would it be at this point in time, like 10 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
And it's just like I'm racking my brain to think of what it is. Like maybe it's like am I just an asshole who just like hates love?
Yes.
Or just doesn't get it, man. Yeah, probably. Like I'm thinking of like love stories, or like love stories that have done this kind of idea but better. One of my favorite aspects is 500 Days of Summer. I don't know if you've ever heard of that movie.
I have never even heard of that.
Okay, it's a movie with Joseph. Do you know who Joseph Gordon-Levitt is?
Nope.
Okay, well, so fucking. All right, it's a good movie. I'll just say that it's a movie about this guy who gets into this on again off again relationship with this girl, and like gets so like emotionally invested and attached to her that it ends up like when they split, it kind of like fucks him up real bad because he's it's basically a story about like how the dangers of getting so attached to a relationship that if like you find yourself self-destructing when it ends and find yourself unable to like establish other relationships because you've invested so much, you've over invested in one and are not mentally prepared for when it ends, that you are not you it then fucks up your ability to establish relationships with other people. It's a really good movie.
It does sound like an intriguing movie. Might have to give it a try. But I guess this is one of those things where it's sort of like you either buy into it or you don't. And considering how rom-com brained I am, I guess it was inevitable that I would buy into it far more easily than you.
Like, and all right, maybe like try to help me out here. Like, I'm trying to think of what is the thing that would like is missing from this that would be
Justification is what if I had to pick your brain a little bit, I would say justification. Because the way it's depicted in the movie, it's a happy relationship, but then it just sort of ends, and although it is tragic, you don't get the sense yet that it should be so tragic. Rather, you get the sense that like, should this really mess him up that bad? If I just had to spitball.
Yeah, I suppose that could be one thing. I think maybe another thing is that, I know this is like very cynical of me to say, but like, what if, and I'm just spitballing here, we cut out the whole Kanai thing entirely and replace it with like more stuff about Takaki and Akari's relationship, like see how they drift apart, and because I think, you know what, maybe that isn't, maybe because we have taken the focus and the perspective from Takaki to this new character Kanai, and in doing so also kind of cut Akari out of the movie entirely until the very end. Now it's like it's harder for me to get behind Takaki's investment in Akari like after they like stop seeing each other in person, now that we are not seeing them keep in touch anymore. But we don't see how they stopped keeping in touch. I think that's it, actually.
That is true. We do not know why they stopped sending each other letters, or why they didn't just text each other. And that's actually a fair thing to point out, because I did have that same question. Why aren't they keeping in touch?
And yeah, actually, you know what? That's exactly it. Like I was not given a proper reason as to why. Like sometimes I get maybe like the defense will be like, hey man, sometimes relationships like end abruptly and they just fade over time, and sometimes you don't get like a narratively satisfying conclusion to a relationship, or like one that would fit a narrative. But it's like, then I think over to the ending of this movie, where at the very end, like they're walking down, there's this AMV, which is kind of goofy. They are walking down the road from the beginning of the movie together, and they're cut off. They pass each other, but they don't like register it at quite 100% that it's them at first. So from Takaki's perspective, we see that he turns around, a train passes by and blocks his vision, and he waits the entire length of the train, and then sees that she's not
two
there
trains
anymore.
Actually.
Oh, there was two trains. Okay,
two separate trains.
Goddamn. Okay, maybe my train counter is off for this movie, because I had this movie at 14 trains. Now I can't remember if I marked that second train or not, so maybe it's actually 15.
So 14 or 15. How much did Place Promised have again?
13 is from what I counted.
I Hell yeah,
Yeah, the
dude.
train
Centimeters
just
per second. Got the
more like
slight
trains
edge right
per
now.
second. Yeah,
Yeah.
the train to second ratio is bigger than Place Promise. But back to the ending. Yeah, he turns around after waiting all those 2 train lengths. She's not there, and he at the end of it all he smiles and he walks away. And I guess that's him being like finally accepting that it's time to move on, but it happens so abruptly and without any build-up for the incredible brief payoff that it feels so underwhelming. At the end of the movie, when the credits started rolling, I was like, wait, that's it?
Admittedly, I wasn't super hooked into the whole scene where he's like waiting for the length of many trains. Although I do, admittedly, the imagery of him waiting for all those trains is kind of seared into my mind. So I guess I did get something out of it. And I do actually kind of have to agree with you on the, well, why did they stop communicating? You know? That is something that I did have in my head. I guess the difference is it just didn't bother me as much. Where like I can acknowledge it as a thing that probably should have been handled better, that probably should have had an explanation. But I mean, it's Makoto Shinkai. If you expect the man to explain himself, you've come to the wrong guy. I don't think it necessarily ruins this movie in the same way it did for you. And I definitely bought into Kanai far more than you were able to. I actually think she, from a character writing perspective, is the best character in the movie. Although the other, the other 2 protagonists, you could make the argument that in demonstrating the movie's themes, they are superior. But I really rooted for Kanai, even if I still wouldn't consider her a great character.
I was rooting for her in the sense that like I kind of didn't really have a choice. It was either root for her and like see her try to confess her love to Takaki or turn the movie off.
Fair.
Yeah, I guess that's just what it comes down to. And like I said earlier, that I was so attached to that first short film that or like what could be the first act that could make for an awesome short film, that like when the rest of the movie like just didn't follow up on it, or at least as satisfyingly as I would have liked, it just kind of like made the whole act of watching the movie like kind of more and more of a depressing circumstance. Not in the sense of like, oh man, I'm watching these relationships like not work out, like not that kind of depressing, in the sense of, oh man, this thing that I liked about this movie is now no longer a part of the movie and now I'm sad.
See, I was feeling the right kind of depression. I was like, oh, this is actually hitting me way harder than I expected it to. And there was something I was going to say, but now I forgot. Oh yeah, the AMV. There are some brief images in the AMV that are not just reused clips and that are very powerful, like her,
Yeah,
now having the wedding ring and clinging to her husband's arm. And those are like, very devastating shots within the context of the film. Although I will say, AMV, it's very hyped up as like this amazing song with amazing visuals to it. I was kind of disappointed by how much of it was reused footage, and they cut really quickly at a lot of points, so it was kind of disorienting.
yeah, it's edited really fast, real fast paced, real quickly for a rom com, and that's been like pretty slow paced the entire movie. So it's like I did kind of feel my heart rate accelerating at that point. I was like needed to catch my breath.
I didn't quite have my heart rate accelerate.
Well,
but...
I exaggerate, but just like it's a sudden uptick in like tempo. Then it's like, Jesus Christ, I've been on cruise control this whole time, and now you're fucking slamming on the gas all of a sudden in the editing.
I do like the song, and I feel like with the right visuals, this would have, this could have gotten a tear or two out of me. But as it stands, yeah, it's okay. But
maybe I need to listen to the song more. I can't remember it right now to save my life.
I mean, I couldn't hum it right now, but I do for a while I remembered the song. I remember thinking about the song as I was going to sleep that night because I watched it like right before bed. So there was a time when I could hum the song.
There was a time for 5 minutes when I can hum the song. That time has passed.
You know, if I brought it back up on YouTube, I'm sure I would remember it pretty quickly. But, you know, for now. And let's see.
I think
there's actually one.
Oh, one more.
This is sort of random, but I did write it down, so I might as well. There's this one bit of monologue that I did enjoy where it's like, through the act of living alone, sadness piles up here and there, in the sheets you hang to dry, in your toothbrush, in your text log. That's the main character monologuing as he's like, you know, going about his day at his house in the final act of the movie. And that sort of did resonate with me because it's essentially saying as you live your life, you'll inevitably basically get bad memories, and if you have them at the wrong place at the wrong time or whatever, eventually those memories will be, you know, brought back from the ordinary parts of life, like, you know, just you're straight up hanging your sheets to dry. And, you know, if you let those bad memories build up over time and let them consume you, eventually everything will become just sort of a slog to get through, and you'll feel like you're just watching things go by as he is doing so far. And I don't know, I just thought that was a really interesting way to communicate the emotion. Other than that, yeah, I'm pretty much done.
Yeah, I ultimately I was into the movie at first, but then as it kept going and steered away from what I loved about the first act, it kind of made me just like care less and less until I was like, 5.
There was actually, so the movie did affect me emotionally, and, you know, even as I was, I say I went to bed right after. I actually took a shower right before going to bed, and, you know, even as I was getting into the shower, I was like, damn, that movie did hit really hard. And there was a part of me that almost wanted me to give it an 8, but there wasn't really a way I could justify it, because I feel like if I had to spitball as to what this movie is missing that would have given me made me give it an 8, it's that, you know, most of the time when I'm watching shows, it's for their characters and the character interactions they're in, and these characters exist mostly to, like I said earlier, communicate the plot and the themes, and beyond that, you don't really learn a whole lot about them.
But Crunchy,
and for the
isn't that the
runtime,
point of all characters and all things?
I will beat you up.
Nah, I know what you're talking about. It's like,
yeah,
like yes, but these characters are
yes,
just not
but also
very interesting.
Like to draw a weird comparison because it's just what I'm watching right now. Soul Eater, I love most of the characters in Soul Eater, at least the ones that have gotten enough screen time, and, you know, I know a lot about their personality and how they interact with each other and see them do goofy stuff. And I see like a huge range of their personality to the point where if I just put them in an everyday scenario as a writer, I would have a general idea of how they would interact and what they would do. If I put the characters in 5 centimeters perspective, or 5 centimeters per second.
5 centimeters perspective.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. If I put them in a random scenario, I guess the main boy would be kind of stoic. I guess. Can I don't know. She'd probably enjoy it. She seems a little more chipper than him. But I mean, I don't really have as firm a grasp as with shows with more developed characters. And that's really the thing where it's like, if you got me really hooked into those characters, you could have had me, you know, balling on the floor at the end. But as is, with its short runtime, it doesn't feel like it's belaboring the point or beating you over the head with it like Place Promised. It's just a fun / depressing short series of films. And no, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's good as is. I would give it a solid 7 out of 10.
Alright, well, I think that will bring us to the end of the first episode of Shinkai Month for the Castaway Anime podcast.
I can't
we
believe I defended Shinkai more in this podcast.
Yeah, I was coming out as the going into this whole month thing, like we were joking, like I would be the Shinkai defender and you would be the Shinkai
The
hater.
Shinkai offender.
Yeah, and then with maybe the possibility of there being a redemption arc, but no, this for this, at least for this episode, we took turns kicking him in the nards, and then you started to pick him up and dust him off while I still wanted to take some pot shots at him.
Pretty much. Nice imagery that is now planted into my brain.
Yeah, just the you know that one clip from JoJo Part 5 of those characters just kicking the one dude like over and over. Have you seen that clip?
I'm not sure I have.
Okay, well, it's just imagine a bunch of JoJo characters like just curb stomping and like shit stomping this guy into the concrete, and just imagine that's us against Makoto Shinkai. At least we were talking about Place Promised in our early days, because God, that movie was horrible.
Yeah, that was that was something else. But admittedly, right after I watched Place Promised, I was like kind of dreading the rest of it. I was like
what if they're all this bad?
Yeah, like I was thinking, I know that Your Name's gonna at least be interesting because I'm revisiting it after all this time. And I know Weathering with You was decent the first time I watched it, but like I have hazy memories, so maybe I'll think differently about it, but it'll still be interesting. But I still have 3 more movies that I haven't seen before, and that I don't know what they're like. But 5 centimeters per second restored some of that faith, but I have not heard good things about Children Who Chase Lost Voices.
Neither have I. I've heard that it's just a Ghibli ripoff.
I'm definitely a bit more hesitant going into that one. Not sure if I want to open myself up emotionally to that film, but you know what? I'll try and give it a chance, right? I'll try and see it through and get something out of it, and maybe I'll love it. Or maybe I'll give it a 2 out of 10, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not really looking for that one, especially because it's also, I'm pretty sure, his longest movie at like 2 hours. So if it ends up being his worst, that's 2 hours of the worst Makoto Shinkai movie. But then again, even it being a Ghibli ripoff, I can't imagine it's any worse than Place Promised in early days, because at least like, you know, the art style looks very off-brand Ghibli, but at least like it's still way better than Place Promised. And
depends how nauseatingly boring will the plot be.
Yeah, but I have heard pretty much exclusively good things about the Garden of Words.
I've heard reserved praise, but it's still, you know, it seems like something I'll enjoy. And if I recall correctly, it's relatively short, so it doesn't overstay.
Yeah, I think that one's only like 47 minutes long.
Yeah,
so
that sounds right.
That'll be, it'll be if it's even if it's bad, it'll be a mercy after Children Who Chase Lost Voices.
And with that, I think that just about does her.
Yeah, I think that'll do her for this episode of the Castaway Anime Podcast of the first part of Shinkai Month. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, head on down to the comments, let us know how right or wrong we are about these movies. What did y'all think of Place Promised in our early days, or the 5 centimeters per second? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with Castaway Anime. More of Shinkai Month all throughout the month of March. Every Saturday we're going to be watching more of Shinkai's movies. You can see what we're going to be watching in the link below in the description. Don't forget to subscribe to Crunchy's channel, follow us on our social platforms, and that'll bring this episode to a close. I'm Neon Manta.
And I'm Gritty Wafer.
And you'll see us next time.
And then picture me, in a picturesque field, and there's like a railroad there, and then a train goes by, and I'm cut off, and then the podcast ends.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you know what? In fact, I think I will just edit the podcast to have a train come by at the very end.
Well, there we go.